The tale opens with Harvey, the protagonist, riding in a car when his driver inquires why he always carries two scripts. With a faint grin, Harvey responds that it's a precaution in case one gets misplaced. The driver chuckles, remarking on Harvey's constant preparedness. He then proposes they grab a bite to eat. As their exchange wraps up, Harvey's demeanor shifts. He recognizes the true motive behind his habit is entirely different, rooted in two distinct reasons. One is a facade for those around him, meant to maintain appearances. As Harvey rests his hand on the nearby script, a system interface materializes before his eyes, displaying a message. The drama trained a youth can be absorbed, with the option to continue the process. A subtle smile crosses Harvey's face. The second script, however, is strictly for himself, meant for absorption in private. Meanwhile, Harvey arrives at LNK Studios, where the team leader Patrick is in a discussion with the director about casting Miller. Concerns arise over the early filming start time, but tensions flare when the director accuses the team of sidelining him. Patrick calmly refutes the claim, though their conversation remains unresolved. By then, Harvey has entered the studio, mentally bracing for another grueling day. Someone nearby notices his arrival, quietly noting how frequently Harvey shows up. Without delay, Harvey approaches and greets the man, then asks if there's any news. The dark-haired man, Hunter, lets out a heavy sigh and gestures toward a towering stack of scripts for upcoming projects in the first half of the year, an overwhelming number. Intrigued, Harvey requests to take a look. Hunter sees no issue with this, confident no one would shy away from reviewing scripts. Thanking him, Harvey flips through the pages. Observing him, Hunter muses to himself that such a diligent worker truly deserves recognition. The scripts Harvey examines span various genres: romances, historical epics, thrillers, all awaiting actors to bring them to life. Yet, none seem like viable options for him. The reason is clear: prize scripts are never handed to extras who only land fleeting close-ups in morning dramas. Still, being surrounded by these scripts fuels Harvey's drive to press forward. Suddenly, a commotion disrupts the quiet. The renowned actor Miller voices frustration at being offered yet another romantic role, his tone revealing a longing to star in a thriller. A staff member tries to persuade him that a lead role, regardless of genre, is still significant. Unconvinced, Miller questions how many more romantic dramas he must endure when his aim is to showcase his talent in darker, more intense projects. Harvey observes the scene, reflecting on the stark contrast in actors' fortunes. Some, like him, scramble for any role, while others, like Miller, casually reject opportunities. This disparity marks the divide between an unknown extra and a soaring star. At one point, Miller's gaze locks onto Harvey, making him uneasy. Thoughts swirl in Harvey's mind as he recalls their shared beginnings as interns, now worlds apart. The moment feels like a subtle challenge, one Harvey deems unworthy of engaging. Responding would only inflate Miller's ego, so he decides to walk away. But before he can, something extraordinary occurs. A faint glow radiates from his hand, and a system notification appears, confirming that the trained-to-youth script can be absorbed. Realizing he's holding that very script, Harvey is jolted back to reality by Hunter's voice, asking why he's frozen in place. Without hesitation, Harvey requests to take the trained-to-youth script to the rehearsal room briefly. In the rehearsal room, Harvey is stunned as multiple system notifications flash before him. The surreal experience is validated by each message, one of which stands out. Absorbing the script will allow him to embody the character with flawless precision. The idea seems unthinkable, yet the potential of this newfound ability is undeniable. If real, it could transform the impossible into reality. Without delay, Harvey initiates the absorption process. The character's emotions, the writer's intent, and every nuance flood his mind as if they were his own memories. When the process concludes, something remarkable happens. The script's lines flow from his mouth effortlessly, with a depth that makes him feel as though he's truly become the character. Scenes from Train to Youth vividly unfold in his mind. Harvey never imagined absorption would grant such extraordinary acting prowess. The realization hits him: everything has changed since absorbing the script. The ability to perform with absolute accuracy feels as if the role was always his. The source of this cinematic power remains a mystery, but one truth is clear. Before, awards, acclaim, and gala invitations were out of reach, leaving him to watch others' triumphs from afar. Now, success feels tangible for the first time. Harvey reflects on the struggles of an aspiring actor's life. Unlike stars, few like him have major studios backing them. He once believed chasing a debut through company support was less vital than seizing rare audition opportunities. Yet, auditions and agency decisions often felt rigged, with roles seemingly pre-assigned, leaving him locked out of elite circles. But now, he senses a shift. Approaching the team leader, Harvey asks if Patrick is free. He recognizes Patrick, head of LNK's first management team, as the gatekeeper through whom all the studio's rising stars have passed. Harvey mentions the open roles in Train to Youth and inquires if casting is complete. Patrick asks if he's interested, and Harvey confirms he is. Patrick notes that Miller has already been cast as the lead, prompting Harvey to recall their shared past as unknowns. He senses Patrick's concern about potential friction between them, but Harvey dismisses it. When Patrick asks which role he's eyeing, Harvey names Chris, a classmate of the main character's small but key role appearing in all 16 episodes. Patrick acknowledges Harvey's passion but questions if the role, with its constant screen time and numerous lines, might be too challenging at this stage. He suggests starting with smaller parts to build camera confidence. Undeterred, Harvey insists on auditioning, determined to give it everything, as if it's his final shot. Patrick relents, and Harvey feels a surge of gratitude. Just then, Larry enters, casually mentioning he's also auditioning for Train to Youth for the same role of Chris. Seeing Larry, Harvey notes that in just 2 years since his debut, Larry has become a rising star, heavily promoted by LNK. Larry extends a hand, noting they'll now compete. Harvey agrees but senses Larry doesn't view him as a serious rival. He knows that for someone like himself, who toils in obscurity without a single frame to show for it, Larry inhabits a different realm. But this time, things will be different. Having fully absorbed the script and immersed himself in the world of Train to Youth, Harvey smiles, ready for the challenge. 7 actors, including Harvey, audition for the role in Train to Youth. Among them, Larry, with his established connections and frequent cameos in KTN's weekend dramas and daily soaps, often secures roles without auditions. Approaching Harvey, Larry asks if he's prepared, to which Harvey modestly replies he's only rehearsed a bit. Larry remarks that Harvey must have had plenty of time to practice, admitting he hasn't even read the script fully due to his filming schedule. A nearby girl curiously asks if everyone is vying for the same role, but a man clarifies they're auditioning for different parts. The casting director arrives, surveys the group, and comments on their striking appearances. A bespectacled man agrees, noting the actors' good looks. The director instructs everyone to enter and await their turn. Patrick hands Harvey a script excerpt, commending his polished appearance and advising him to stay calm and read the scene. The girl asks about the text, and the man explains it's a specific scene's passage. With the schedule running behind, they've scrapped free improvisation, focusing solely on the character's lines. He adds that the director has been holding auditions since 9,000 a.m., urging patience. The girl expresses dismay, having prepared improvisation for weeks. Larry, anxious, asks if he needs to memorize the text, but Patrick reassures him that reading from the page is better than stumbling through half-learned lines. The candidates grow nervous, debating who the lines address and how to deliver them. Harvey, determined to stay composed, believes calmness will carry him through. The casting director calls Chelsea first. Her audition ends in just 5 minutes, and as she exits, she grumbles that she wasn't allowed to showcase her prepared improvisation. Patrick attempted to comfort her, suggesting she'd done well regardless. Larry exited the room in great spirits, proclaiming that some roles were already confirmed and that Miller was definitely set to star as the lead. Observing Larry's pleased expression, Patrick assumed his own audition had gone successfully. Larry mentioned that the director recognized him from the TV show Mighty Sam Boach, which likely helped. With a slightly smug grin, he brushed it off as a minor detail. Just then, the casting director called Harvey in. Before he entered, a staff member wished him good luck. Harvey reminded himself to stay calm. Inside the audition room, a man at a table asked if the actor had received the script, to which Harvey confirmed he had. Noticing Harvey's empty hands, the man asked if he'd forgotten the script. Harvey clarified that he'd memorized the entire section. The man noted that Harvey could refer to the text if needed and signaled for him to start. Harvey announced he'd begin with the 3rd episode at the 25-minute mark. The man provided a cue, asking if Chris was suitable for Sally. Harvey launched into his performance, rejecting the idea and stressing that Sally never judged others based on wealth. The man then requested a jump to the 4th episode at the 33-minute mark for the scene where Chris loses his temper. Harvey sharply accused Lester of acting out of insecurity, demanding he stop lashing out at others. As he performed, a woman on the panel observed him with clear interest. She recalled a line from the 1st episode about the pain of separation feeling physical and noticed Harvey's subtle eyelid twitch, like an instinctive blink at emotional peaks. She asked if this was intentional. Harvey admitted he wasn't sure of the writer's exact vision, so he interpreted it his own way. The woman, thrilled, said this was precisely the nuance she'd envisioned when writing the scene. Another man asked when Harvey had memorized the entire script. Harvey replied that he'd learned it 2 days prior. The man was astonished, noting the full script through the 4th episode had only been sent to agencies 2 days earlier. It turned out Harvey had mastered 4 episodes plus the audition clip in just 1 day. The man then inquired if Harvey could handle more script or a drastically altered character, and Harvey confidently assured him he could. The man declared the audition complete. As Harvey left, the man turned to the casting director, amazed, asking where this actor had come from. The casting director, equally stunned, noted Harvey had debuted long ago but had somehow remained overlooked until now. The woman, still impressed, smiled and said everyone was likely thinking the same thing. The director then decided to overhaul the script, centering it on Chris, transforming a secondary character into the story's core. After the audition, Harvey stepped outside, where Lindsay was waiting. Lindsay, a colleague and fellow actor who'd had little success, greeted him with a hand on his shoulder and asked how it went. Harvey said it felt no different than before, as if nothing had changed. Lindsay chuckled, recalling their old days auditioning together. In that moment, Harvey reflected that Lindsay hadn't quit acting due to a lack of skill. If talent alone mattered, Lindsay would have outshone both him and Miller. The true reason for Lindsay's exit was a lack of that elusive star quality. Later, over a meal at a restaurant, Lindsay confessed that had he known how dull his current life would be, he might have clung to his acting dreams longer. Harvey suggested he drink sparingly. Lindsay remarked that seeing Harvey brought him comfort, as if his own sacrifice and abandoned dreams weren't for nothing. He said buying Harvey a drink now gave him peace. Lindsay added that patience always prevails, and watching Harvey persist gave him hope for his friend's success. Harvey thanked him, but Lindsay waved it off as too sentimental, proposing they just drink. Sitting there, Harvey mused that life offered no simple paths, and pursuing acting felt like navigating a dark, endless tunnel with no light in sight. Lindsay shifted topics, asking if Harvey still thought he was stealing the spotlight. Harvey replied that nothing had changed. Lindsay, with a hint of reproach, called someone ungrateful, recalling how they'd once vowed to support each other, only for that person to change after finding success. Harvey urged him to let it go and move on. Lindsay's frustration lingered, so Harvey suggested he step out for a cigarette to calm down. In his thoughts, Harvey admitted that while he didn't want to resent Miller's success, he sometimes wondered why Miller had changed so much. Lindsay lit a cigarette and offered one to Harvey, who declined, saying he'd quit. Lindsay brought up auditions again, asking if Harvey had tried out for Train to the Young. Harvey said it seemed to go well. Lindsay, noting his confidence, asked who'd play the lead. Harvey revealed Miller would star, Ingrid would take the female lead, and Kendrick would play the second male role, adding that the series would likely earn strong ratings. Surprised, Lindsay asked if Harvey had been sent to meet Miller and what the real reason was. Harvey didn't elaborate, privately weary of Miller's success and his own constant oversight. Checking his phone, Harvey saw a message from his manager urging him to seize every audition opportunity. He realized the once smooth system at L&K Company was now in disarray. Despite his debut, his name still hadn't appeared on major platforms. His experience was limited to a few university workshops, small theater roles, and a handful of commercials, leaving him feeling like a useless gear in a broken machine. At the office, Harvey overheard colleagues discussing his selection over Larry. Patrick, smiling, said he'd been eager for Harvey's arrival. He handed Harvey a coffee and invited him to the restroom. Just then, Larry approached, congratulating Harvey on passing the audition. Harvey thanked him, and Larry hurried off to film. Following Patrick, Harvey thought that without his unique ability, he'd likely wear the same mask of concealed envy as others. Patrick noticed Harvey looked different than when speaking with Larry, adding that he seemed genuinely happy, and his smile was uplifting. Lost in thought, Harvey wondered why he felt such contentment. For the first time, he realized Larry and Miller were no different from him. This realization warmed him, even making him flush slightly. Hearing the director plan to rewrite the script and alter the character, Patrick suggested the director had likely spotted Harvey's talent. Harvey laughed and thanked him for the sentiment. Suddenly, Chelsea stormed into the office, visibly upset, fretting that her role might be cut. Her colleagues tried to soothe her, but she ignored them. Harvey acted as if he weren't there. Approaching him, Chelsea asked to speak privately. Initially, Harvey didn't respond, but eventually agreed. Outside, Chelsea pleaded with Harvey to ask the director to keep her role, claiming he clearly favored Harvey. Confused, Harvey asked where she got that idea. She explained that everyone was talking about his standout final audition, prompting the script and role changes. She begged him to put in a word for her, even suggesting he recommend her for the role of a wealthy classmate. As she spoke, Harvey recalled a memory he wished he could erase when he'd once asked Miller for a minor role and Miller's response. Harvey wondered if Chelsea was implying he was responsible for her needing to re-audition. Chelsea shouted, blaming him outright, accusing him of over-preparing and memorizing the script obsessively to show off. Harvey thought she was beyond help. When she demanded what he meant, he said she'd never truly prepared for an audition in her life. If her role was cut during revisions, it only proved she hadn't shown her value. He added that he'd at least thought she knew her limits, then turned and walked away. Back in the office, Patrick saw the encounter's impact on Harvey's face and assumed Chelsea was just envious and greedy. He advised Harvey to try to understand her, then shifted topics, asking where they'd left off. Harvey reminded him they were discussing the director. Patrick confirmed, naming the director Axel, and noted that this time, Axel desperately needed a hit. Harvey pondered director Axel's situation, aware that a project flop could demote him to crafting weekend soaps or shuffling papers in the planning department. He questioned whether the director's role was truly kindized by the dismal ratings. Patrick, however, clarified that contracts weren't the issue, they were ironclad. The real problem was that tweaking the script for Harvey's benefit only highlighted the director's erratic tendencies. Several actors grumbled about Axel, and there'd likely be plenty of last-minute script changes during shooting. Harvey mused on how some actors lose screen time out of necessity, while others get extra lines because the episode count is fixed and characters can't be fully erased from the story, though their roles can be diminished. Patrick pointed out that Axel always clashes with lead actors on every project, yet is still hailed as a genius in his field. Harvey asked if Axel personally picked Miller for the starring role. Patrick replied that the company had a hand in that decision too, then asked why Harvey was curious. Harvey just thought he'd suspected as much. In his view, Axel probably didn't choose alone. An up-and-comer like Miller was likely cast to offset losses from his previous box office bomb through this drama. Knowing Miller's haughty attitude, Harvey wondered how long he'd survive under the thumb of a traditional whimsical director. With that, Harvey stood, decided it wasn't his problem, and left. Soon, the first script reading day arrived. Harvey observed Miller, noting his stiff posture. It dawned on him that despite Miller's recent boasts about breezing through a romantic drama, he likely hadn't even skimmed the script properly. Abruptly, a system notification popped up before Harvey, stating that content from a drama called Train to Youth had already been viewed. Then the casting director strode in, asking if everyone was present. As it was the first reading, he requested brief introductions from all. He directed each actor to share their name and a bit about themselves. Miller introduced himself, stating he'd play Usher. Next, a young woman named Ingrid said she was cast as Sally and expressed excitement about working with the team. Harvey followed, introducing himself as the new actor playing Chris, admitting the role stretched beyond his current skills, so he'd approach it with great humility. The casting director kicked off the first episode's reading. The scene, set in spring 2009, introduced Asher, a determined young man from humble roots. In contrast, Chris, a high schooler, basked in privilege thanks to his congressman father. Sally, a schoolgirl, was the first love for both. Ingrid delivered her line, hoping the two boys would reconcile their friendship. Miller responded, saying his character reflected on his bond with Chris, admitting he was so consumed by it that he ignored everything else. He noted that no one in his class mocked his background, yet he remained an outsider. Even with a wealthy friend like Chris, their worlds were miles apart. Harvey realized this scene was pivotal to the episode and marked the start of his own filming. The casting director then approached Miller, asking him to redo the scene, this time masking his emotions. Miller seemed thrown by the request. The director explained that Miller was too emotional, and since the line was spoken before the girl Asher liked, the scene needed a sense of shame, not just raw feeling. Miller agreed to retry. Harvey watched closely, dissecting the moment. He saw it was a tough scene where Asher voiced sorrow over his hardships in front of Chris. It demanded layered sadness tinged with humiliation, but Miller only conveyed anger, revealing a shallow grasp of the role. The reading pressed on, and with most actors seasoned, the vibe stayed upbeat. But trouble soon brewed. A man suddenly shouted, announcing himself as Chris. It was Kendrick, the second lead, loudly staking his claim as the second male lead. Harvey recognized him as a model, likely hired for his fame alone. Though striking, his talent seemed squandered. The casting director moved to the next scene. Harvey wondered if his moment had finally come. The scene, set at the first episode's close, showed his character visiting Asher at home. Asher crouched on the floor, visibly tense, when a knock sounded. Miller, as Asher, turned to Harvey and asked if it was him. Harvey, script-free, dove in, urgently asking to be let inside, saying he had something critical to discuss. Miller glanced at the script and shot back, accusing Harvey's character of talking down to him and asking if he thought himself better. Harvey calmly countered, denying any such intent but hinting that things might soon shift, and accused Asher of stirring trouble. Ingrid, watching Harvey, was struck by how effortlessly he slipped into the role without glancing at the text. Harvey's character pressed on, warning Miller not to act superior and questioning how long the students would back him. Miller fired back, telling him to watch himself, but Harvey coolly rapped his part, saying someone was keeping a close eye on Asher. When the scene ended, Harvey admitted he'd flubbed his lines slightly and apologized to Miller for going off script. Miller, visibly annoyed, snapped at him to slow down and read the script carefully. The casting director, pleased with everyone's efforts, thanked them for their hard work. He noted the script had been unexpectedly revised, making it trickier to parse, but praised their deep character analysis. As a thank you, he offered to host a team dinner at a restaurant that evening. Outside, Patrick waited for the group. He asked how it went. The director, clearly impressed, called Harvey a powerhouse, wondering where such a gifted actor came from. Miller, under his breath, muttered that it was all nonsense. Patrick then asked the director to let him borrow Harvey and Miller for a bit. Miller, fuming, confronted Harvey, accusing him of acting untouchable just because he'd aced one audition and asking if he'd lost his mind. Harvey calmly asked why Miller was blaming him for his own lack of preparation. Miller's anger flared. He shouted, reminding Harvey how he'd once begged for a spot on the project and now acted cocky after barely making the cut. He unleashed his frustration, saying this was exactly why he avoided working with unknowns. Harvey stayed quiet, reflecting. Now he saw why Miller always brushed him off. Those who tasted success often deem the lives of less successful people insignificant. Miller kept hurling insults, but Harvey turned and walked away. He thought Miller's presence was like a disease, capable of spreading failure to everyone around him. The idea repulsed him, but he was certain it explained Miller's behavior. Soon, Harvey entered the restaurant where the team was gathered. They waved him over, and he approached, asking for tongs and offering to man the grill for someone. Minutes later, Miller reappeared, now somewhat calmer. The group invited him to join them, observing that the meat on his table was barely cooked, but Miller politely refused, mentioning a mild stomach discomfort. Someone at the gathering remarked that the lead actor should sit directly across from the director, labeling his conduct as discourteous and improper. Others speculated if he always acted this way, and commented that such behavior at the outset of the project was not a good sign. Harvey then chimed in, stating that he wasn't particularly close to either Miller or the director. He reflected on how tight-knit the Korean entertainment industry truly was. In his view, the fall of a well-known actor or the rapid rise of a fresh face across all three major television networks often stem from such subtle moments. Harvey recalled his senior colleague Mira, who exuded a calm assurance and had clear expectations for her junior peers. He believed that earning the respect of such a seasoned professional would pave an easier path forward. Realizing he had made a positive impression, he felt he was off to a promising start. At that moment, the director addressed the group, commending their efforts and calling it an excellent beginning, encouraging them to keep up the momentum. The team responded with enthusiastic cheers, and Harvey felt a surge of genuine happiness. The following morning, Harvey awoke feeling disoriented and with a pounding headache. He struggled to recall how much he had consumed the previous night. Something felt off, and he soon realized he wasn't in his dorm. His mother entered the room, noting that he had come home very late. She mentioned that if it hadn't been for Lindsay, he might have passed out on the street in the cold. She then called him downstairs to eat, saying she had prepared bean sprout soup. As he got out of bed, Harvey reflected that some things in life remained constant. The debt still lingered, but so did the warmth of their home, alongside those odd, unsettling memories. At the dining table, he saw his parents already discussing him. His mother asked if he was overly stressed lately, observing that he rarely visited home. Harvey reassured her that things were going well for him these days. His mother smiled, saying she felt relieved. Looking at her, Harvey thought how radiant she still appeared despite her age, certain that he owed his own good looks to her. She added that even if he came home utterly intoxicated, she cherished seeing him. She mentioned preparing fried radish and bean sprout soup, proudly declaring herself a good mother. She urged him to visit more often, even if just occasionally, as warm family dinners remain precious. Harvey recalled how he once viewed such words as mere pretense, feeling unworthy of facing his family due to his lack of success. But now, things were different. He told his mother that the miniseries Train to Youth would air on SBC on December 18th at 10 p.m., so she'd see him on screen more often. He shared that he had passed the audition and hoped she'd look forward to the premiere. Overjoyed, his mother exclaimed with delight, praising what a wonderful son she had. Her happiness filled Harvey with deep contentment, realizing this was why he pursued acting. She then called her friends, proudly sharing her son's accomplishments. Later, while checking her phone, she noticed Harvey's name in the news. He casually remarked that it was just a mention, but she insisted such things deserved promotion and celebration. Thrilled, she began phoning her friends, joyfully recounting her son's success. Afterward, Harvey retreated to his room to review the scripts the team leader had given him the previous night, likely while he was drunk. The more he thought about it, the more grateful he felt. He received 3 scripts: Mong Artists, A Woman's Cry, and Bus Driver. All were slated to begin filming later that year. Harvey chose to start with Bus Driver, eager to dive into its content. Suddenly, a system window appeared before him, displaying a message that his connection with the script had reached its peak, granting him access to data on the completion status of unreleased films. Another window listed these films with ratings on a 100-point scale. Harvey pondered whether the numbers indicated points out of 100 or a completion percentage, but they clearly reflected completion percentages. As he picked up the scripts, more windows appeared. The film Miracle in Prison scored 92 out of 100. The Advocate scored 96, while Sweet Beginning Sad Ending scored only 45. The first 2 were regarded as masterpieces of Korean cinema, each exceeding 90. In contrast, Miller's debut film, Sweet Beginnings, Sad Endings, was a flop, garnering just 45 and failing to reach 1.5 million views. Harvey deduced that the system revealed the script's quality. While it didn't ensure commercial success, it helped identify high-quality projects. He considered using the system to assess Train to Youth as well, but a subsequent notification clarified that the system didn't work with incomplete scripts, meaning dramas with revised texts couldn't be evaluated. Harvey realized that Train to Youth, like many similar dramas, was likely to fail. Still, he gained a clearer understanding of the system's mechanics. Reviewing the scripts again, he resolved to avoid forcing himself into dubious projects. There were plenty of opportunities out there, and he just needed to wait for the right one to succeed in. Later, Harvey arrived at L&K's studio and sought out the team leader. Spotting him, he greeted him warmly, and the leader remarked that Harvey looked lively and well-rested. He added that he had exciting news, to which Harvey responded with curiosity. At that moment, the leader informed someone over the phone that Harvey had arrived. Seconds later, another person entered the room, greeting Harvey with enthusiasm. Surprised, Harvey turned to face the new arrivals. He spotted Hunter arriving alongside a young woman. Hunter gave him a knowing glance, remarking that it had been quite a while since their last meeting. Patrick then made introductions, noting that these were the colleagues Harvey would collaborate with moving forward. He mentioned that Harvey was already acquainted with Hunter, now serving as a tour manager, and Harvey nodded, confirming he recalled Hunter but inquired about the woman beside him. The team leader clarified that she was Juno, recently transferred from another firm, and would take on the role of Harvey's stylist. He explained that Hunter had been given the full schedule and details, so Harvey simply needed to follow directions and pay close attention. Curiosity piqued. Harvey asked Hunter if he still handled all these tasks, given his new role as a director rather than a manager. Hunter responded that the industry was short on management staff. The pay was modest, the work demanding, and the entertainment world wasn't as glamorous as it appeared. Still, Hunter admitted he had no grievances, noting that it had been years since he'd worked on the road, and the nostalgia now made it enjoyable. Juno chimed in, lightening the mood by suggesting they probably should have exchanged handshakes upon meeting. Harvey formally introduced himself, expressing excitement about their upcoming collaboration. Hunter proposed relocating to another space to dive into further business matters. Once settled in the new room, Hunter passed Harvey some paperwork, explaining it outlined a teaser concept for the upcoming Saturday. He mentioned that the project, Train to Youth, had plans for a teaser and poster shoot. Juno shared that she'd crafted the concept photo after discussions with the costume team leader for the project. Hunter elaborated that the teaser revolved around a train journey, a familiar theme but perfectly suited for Train to Youth. Juno added that the costume design would emphasize Chris's role as a journalist, opting for a sleek, modern aesthetic. Hunter offered his perspective, admitting his words might seem hollow, but watching Harvey come into the office daily, engrossed in his scripts, convinced him that Harvey was on the cusp of breaking out. Harvey let out a quiet laugh at this. Turning to Juno, Hunter recalled how Harvey's eyes sparkled as he read the script, revealing an ambition he couldn't conceal. This caught Harvey off guard momentarily, but Hunter quickly reassured him that ambition was a vital trait. Smiling, Harvey asked how they viewed him now that he seemed more driven than they'd anticipated, or was something still lacking. Juno replied that he seemed content enough, and all that remained was for him to dazzle on stage. Hunter pointed out that Juno, meeting Harvey for the first time, didn't yet know him as well as he did, having known him for years. He added that he always trusted his gut. Juno, however, softly countered that she wasn't entirely convinced, and as they bantered, Harvey felt at ease. He playfully asked them to stop poking fun at him, noting their shared sense of humor. Hunter laughed and proposed they go out for dinner to toast Harvey's debut before heading home. Harvey agreed and invited Juno to join them. Juno cheerfully said she was game. Harvey suggested broth soup for the meal, and both Hunter and Juno enthusiastically agreed they loved it. As they walked out, Harvey reflected on how Hunter and Juno had already set the stage perfectly for him. The teaser shoot was set for the day after tomorrow. Leaving with a smile, he thought about savoring every moment. The following day, it all began when Hunter noticed Harvey arriving earlier than scheduled. He mentioned he was just about to call him in 10 minutes. Harvey explained that he'd likely woken up out of habit, nervous for his first shoot. He asked if Hunter had slept well. Hunter replied that, despite his years of experience, the crisp morning air always felt the most refreshing to him. Harvey flashed a grin before slipping into the car where Juno was already seated. She welcomed him warmly, and Harvey inquired if she was feeling fatigued. Juno, with a bold tone, declared she wasn't tired in the least. Harvey's mind drifted back to just 2 days prior, when they'd both gotten so intoxicated they nearly didn't make it home, collapsing from the night's excess. The more he observed her, the more he became certain she was truly one of a kind. It was only 5:00 a.m., with 4 hours to go before filming started, but prep work demanded time. Soon, Harvey was fully ready. Juno gave him a once-over and asked how he felt about the suit. Harvey replied that he was fond of it. Hunter let out a chuckle, remarking that after Miller and Larry's recent troubles, anyone near Harvey would now be overshadowed by his charisma. Juno nodded in agreement, adding that Harvey always appeared flawless, every outfit suiting him perfectly. Hunter pointed out that Juno had a keen eye for fashion as well. He then quipped that if he donned the suit himself, he'd never look as sharp. Juno, with a playful smirk, said that much was obvious. Harvey in turn commended Juno, noting her knack for hitting where it stings. Deep down, he felt the suit was a stark contrast to his usual attire. With each breath, he sank deeper into his role. For the first time, Harvey sensed the admiring stares from those around him. Soon, they all moved toward the car. Abruptly, Hunter approached the lead. Before climbing in, he asked if it was time to head out. Harvey, initially taken aback, nodded in agreement, and they entered the vehicle. En route to the Train to Youth set, Harvey reflected on how oddly he hadn't been able to sleep that morning. Gazing out the window, he noticed how the passing scenery mirrored the drama's mood. Hunter, scrolling through his phone, mentioned they had roughly 20 minutes until filming began and asked Harvey what he planned to do, suggesting they hang back a bit. Harvey, however, opted to go greet the crew. Hunter agreed, saying it was a smart move for a first shoot, and tagged along. Harvey then met the director, offering a courteous greeting and asking how he was holding up. The director, clearly pleased, responded warmly, noting Harvey's early arrival. Harvey shrugged, saying it just worked out that way. The director then remarked that Harvey's timing was perfect. Taking him by the arm, the director guided him to a specific spot, instructing him to stand there. After a careful look, the director commented that Harvey looked exactly as envisioned. Harvey wondered if the team's high energy stemmed from the project teetering on the edge of cancellation. Just then, the director turned and spotted the newly arrived actors, Ingrid and Kendrick. He greeted them, praising their punctuality. Noticing nearly all the actors were present, the director proposed discussing the storyboard over hot coffee. At that moment, a staff member informed him that one person was still missing. Surprised, the director asked who it was, and the staffer revealed it was Miller. Visibly stunned, the director quickly demanded to know when Miller would arrive. The staffer promised to contact the right people immediately and called another team member to confirm if Miller had reached the location. They were told Miller would arrive in 5 minutes. Observing the scene, Harvey felt a pang of guilt, though he knew the assistant director wasn't truly at fault. Hunter approached, advising Harvey not to stress too much. He explained that the situation was a sort of performance, a display to show the team that tardiness could wrongly shift blame in the future. Hunter added that the actor's behavior had changed since becoming a presenter, gradually picking up the bad habits of senior colleagues. With filming no longer starting precisely at 9 a.m., the actor had begun to think the schedule should bend to his convenience, effectively training the production team to accommodate him. Harvey, surprised, wondered silently why actors and production teams clashed at all when they could simply collaborate and support one another. Hunter noted that as a newcomer, he'd once said the same thing. The comment caught Harvey off guard. Hunter then said he'd go talk to the actor. Raising his voice, he called Miller a stubborn fool and questioned what he was doing on his first shoot. Juno joined them, reassuring Harvey not to fret. She explained it was better to call someone out early than to let a situation escalate where the assistant director faced punishment for something he didn't do. She emphasized that despite the friendly facade, behind-the-scenes politics and power struggles were ever present. Harvey agreed, reflecting on how pitiful it was to see employees, managers, directors, and actors smiling while secretly wielding knives, all vying for control. Yet, he knew an even sadder spectacle awaited. Moments later, Miller stepped out of a car, slipping on his jacket and apologizing for his delay, blaming his manager for taking a wrong turn. He asked where the director was, watching reactions closely. Harvey, observing quietly, asked what Miller was up to, but Juno remarked it was just another performance. Harvey doubted the tactic would work, but Juno assured him nobody would dare challenge the lead actor after such a grand entrance. Harvey, however, knew better. He recalled Patrick saying director Axel wasn't one to value actors as individuals. Axel was a man who, for the sake of art, delivered directorial jabs with pride and had no intention of changing his approach. Harvey believed Miller's strategy would fail. At that moment, the director approached with a faint, sardonic smile. He greeted the great actor Miller with biting irony, declaring that since he'd finally deigned to show up, they'd better start filming before sunrise to avoid wasting the precious time of such a busy man. Miller, confused by the director's odd demeanor, didn't grasp the reaction. The director sharply reminded him of his tardiness and told him to prep for the scene. Miller apologized again, reiterating that his manager had taken the wrong route. With a caustic grin, the director suggested they might need to upgrade their navigation system. The unexpected jabs silenced Miller, and Juno, standing nearby, couldn't suppress a laugh. She found the director's outburst entertaining, thinking it was a show worth watching with popcorn in hand. Harvey silently agreed but found Juno's reaction slightly unnerving. He then pondered what a teaser was, something like an appetizer before the main dish, a small taste meant to spark the audience's curiosity. A teaser, unlike a trailer, avoids revealing the actual storyline, focusing instead on crafting an atmosphere to captivate and intrigue viewers. As the team viewed the teaser for the movie, they discussed its impressive ranking as the second most trending video, with overwhelmingly positive feedback. They praised the exceptional quality of the cinematography and the vividness of the visuals, noting that the production crew had clearly spared no expense in creating this piece. No one detected any traces of low-budget CGI, and all agreed that teams operating at the caliber of the film industry were producing projects on an entirely different level. Hunter, delighted with the teaser, placed his hand on Harvey's shoulder and commended his on-screen charisma. Harvey, with a grin, responded that he only appeared briefly in the background of another character in the video. But Hunter maintained that Harvey had stolen the scene and asked what it felt like to see a teaser featuring himself trending in real time. Harvey paused to consider the question. As a newcomer to Train to Youth, ranked 18th in popularity, he knew his recognition was still modest compared to others. Glancing at his phone, he marveled at seeing his own face online, overwhelmed by a wave of long-awaited recognition and attention. To him, it felt like succumbing to a sweet yet perilous allure. Hunter, observing the response, remarked that with minimal competition from other shows, this was an ideal outcome, and the team could anticipate great success. Harvey smiled, maintaining his upbeat demeanor. Suddenly, a shout interrupted the moment. Miller, voice laced with frustration, declared he refused to watch what he called garbage. A surprised crew member explained they only meant to compliment Miller's appearance in the teaser. But Miller, growing angrier, dismissed the teaser as cheap and filled with second-rate emotions, calling it a pathetic display. Whispers spread among the crew, confused by his outburst. Hunter was momentarily at a loss for how to respond. Soon, the director, shifting focus back to filming, called for another take. He inquired about the crew's mood and reminded them they needed to wrap up before lunch, including the photo shoot for the poster. He noted they were in a tourist area and children would soon arrive, creating chaos. Crew members began discussing the situation. Some felt the previous take was successful and questioned why the director seemed so upset. Others suggested it was his way of enforcing discipline on set, as no one tolerated arrogance there. Another pointed out that their lease was expiring and the director couldn't afford delays. Hunter observed that when a director and actor clashed, the crew bore the brunt, and Miller faced harsh criticism that day. Someone wondered why Miller provoked the director at all, especially since the general manager had already clarified the situation, and perhaps the actor had simply forgotten. Ingrid speculated that, given Miller's personality, he only restrained himself because he was the lead. Still, everyone agreed that being reprimanded on the first day of filming undermined the director's authority, with Miller solely to blame. Larry added that Miller's tendency to spark conflicts was well known. Yet another crew member noted that, despite his difficult nature, Miller wasn't someone who would recklessly sabotage his career. Harvey reflected on this as well. He agreed Miller's outburst wasn't a sign of weakness. Even as a host, Miller didn't strike him as someone who'd lose control abruptly. Meanwhile, Hunter pointed out another issue had emerged. He turned to Harvey with concern, drawing the attention of others to the newcomer. A man with glasses approached Hunter and Harvey, eyeing the latter and asking what his role was in this. The director, looking at Harvey, praised his ability to convey emotion through a thoughtful gaze, perfectly capturing longing and pain. Harvey gave a brief chuckle, but noted how different this reaction was from working with Miller. The director continued, admiring how Harvey expressed the dissonance between a glorious past and a fractured friendship with a single look. Harvey accepted the praise calmly, aware that the director had personally crafted the character of Chris, explaining his deep emotional investment. Ordinarily, such praise might have eased set tensions. But Miller, unexpectedly, voiced irritation at the apparent consensus among the crew, who followed the director's guidance almost mechanically. In Harvey's mind, he acknowledged that such unity could become problematic if it overshadowed the protagonist. He approached Miller, accusing him of falling short of even supporting role expectations, and urging him to stop acting childish and disrupting others with unnecessary errors. Miller's anger flared, his hands trembling with rage, his reaction noticed by all. Crew members whispered, concerned that the outburst occurred in front of the director and staff. Some wondered if the cameras were rolling and whether the CEO would hear of the incident, though all hoped it wouldn't leak. Harvey, reflecting, realized that despite crew chief Patrick's efforts to smooth things over, the incident had already marked Miller's career. He decided he wouldn't openly confront Miller, but would instead outshine him through his performance alone. Harvey believed that by provoking Miller solely with his acting, without words, he'd eventually crack. In time, Miller would be isolated. A crew member then approached Miller, politely asking him to rein in his anger. Miller brushed them off, grumbling that he would, then cursed the team for being overly fussy. He approached the director with a broad smile and claimed he didn't understand the script. The surprised director questioned whether his instructions were unclear, as he found the script's directions straightforward. Miller insisted he was following the script and didn't grasp what more was expected. Pointing to the script, the director explained that Miller had completely misread the scene. It was meant to evoke warm memories of Chris before the character's anger surfaced, but Miller had played it like a lunatic. Miller, however, found the criticism too harsh. The increasingly exasperated director reminded him he'd explained this repeatedly, stating, "Asher is the core of the entire drama. He's a character who restrains his emotions, not one who erupts at the first sign of tension. The key lies in subtle acting, restrained movements, and quiet inner strength." The director was baffled by Miller's difficulty in understanding this. Miller then blamed the script's lack of clarity. Smiling in disbelief, the director retorted that Miller simply failed to analyze the character properly, escalating his reprimand. A crew member asked Hunter if he should step in to de-escalate, but Hunter suggested waiting, noting that Harvey was already approaching. Meanwhile, at the edge of the set, Juno munched popcorn, thoroughly enjoying the drama, likening it to a lively TV debate show. As Harvey observed, he pondered whether she had popped the popcorn beforehand. The director, already raising his voice, insisted that Miller understand how much time his delays had cost. He questioned if Miller thought shooting romantic scenes was a trivial matter. Following this, the director turned to his assistant, directing them to summon a second director and instructing Miller to revise the script. He then declared a shift in scenes, prompted the next actor to prepare, and told the camera crew to adjust the shot's framing. Subsequently, a crew member approached Harvey, informing him that he'd need to start filming first and asking if he was prepared. Harvey confirmed he was ready. The same assistant then checked with Penelope, asking if all was well, and she replied positively. Harvey's thoughts drifted to Penelope. Despite being 3 years his junior, this was her third project. Given that their characters shared a long-term romance from their school days, they'd be working closely on set. He suggested she drop formalities to avoid awkwardness, and she agreed, saying she'd call him OA and encouraged him to speak more casually. Her warm tone reassured Harvey, and he felt confident they'd get along. The director then apologized to both for the abrupt scene change, and they assured him it was fine. He proposed a rehearsal, referencing a script page, and the lead reminded him it was page 32, scene 12, episode 1. Harvey recalled that the upcoming scene featured a young couple casually discussing their future years ahead. With a camera on rails in use, visual dynamics were key. He softly asked Penelope if he could take her hand. Surprised and blushing, she consented. He gently clasped her hand as the set fell silent. Internally, Harvey noted how effortlessly Penelope delivered her lines, her performance natural and tender. Everything flowed seamlessly. At that moment, a crew member announced the take was starting. Everyone assumed their positions, and filming commenced. Harvey and Penelope performed their roles with evident enjoyment. Later, the crew chief stepped out of a car and questioned Miller, suspecting he might reconsider. Miller, however, snapped that he had no interest in continuing. The director reminded him he'd been warned about the director's challenging demeanor and urged him to stay composed. Miller retorted that he'd made it clear from the start he didn't want to work on a romantic project. Frustrated, Patrick asked if now was the time to be picky about roles, noting that tardiness was one issue, but cursing at the director and losing control was excessive. He also remarked on Miller's odd resentment toward Harvey. Enraged, Miller swore and scornfully dismissed Harvey, insisting the lead role was still his, then stormed off. A crew member tried to stop him, pointing out that the leader was still speaking, but Miller ignored them and left. Another crew member chased after him, clarifying that the general manager meant no offense. Hunter then turned to the manager, asking if the project was moving forward. The manager confirmed it was, explaining Miller was chosen to offset losses from a prior flop, making cancellation impossible. Meanwhile, Harvey envisioned his character Chris, a student who easily connected with others and was especially close to Lily. Their reunion, however, didn't rekindle old feelings, though she remained his sole romantic partner. They weren't the central couple in the drama, but served as vital, emotional anchors. This was the character arc the director had crafted for Chris. Observing the actors' performances, the director was satisfied, confident his knack for casting remained sharp. After the scene, Harvey approached the director, requesting permission to greet the boss. The director warmly agreed, calling Harvey a solid guy. Harvey humbly demurred and headed toward the manager. Meanwhile, Patrick, still visibly annoyed with Miller, overheard Hunter remark that Miller had grown overly cocky. At that moment, Harvey joined them, greeting the director and asking if he was there to monitor filming progress. The group leader smiled, sharing that he'd heard glowing reviews about Harvey, even mentioning that Miss Samira was disappointed not to have scenes with him. Harvey modestly said he wasn't doing anything extraordinary. Patrick advised him to ignore others and keep up his momentum. Harvey promised he would. Before leaving, the manager encouraged Harvey to maintain his strong work and approach the director. Hunter then placed a hand on Harvey's shoulder, commending him for managing challenges independently, admitting that Harvey's efforts left him with little to do on set. Harvey chuckled, saying it was too soon to chase bigger roles, though inwardly he acknowledged his ambition. Behind his polite newcomer facade burned a fierce desire for recognition. He vowed to elevate himself within a year, no matter the cost. The set's atmosphere was vibrant and upbeat, and Harvey felt content. Things had run smoothly since Patrick's manager visited. Even the prior source of tension had noticeably calmed, likely due to pressure from the production company and CEO. Harvey's gaze shifted to Juno, who was idly munching popcorn, grumbling that she'd brought 2 buckets for nothing, as the expected drama didn't unfold. Harvey began to question if she was even rooting for them. Approaching, Hunter expressed hope that things would resolve peacefully, noting that even Miller was making an effort. He emphasized the need for a calm set atmosphere. Harvey, however, thought to himself that this was just the beginning. Hunter agreed, mentioning that after an afternoon interview, filming would continue. He stepped away to take a call, and Harvey nodded. Watching Miller, Harvey saw he was genuinely trying to curb his temper, suggesting the leader's words had an impact. While not perfect, it was the best outcome for now. After his call, Hunter told Harvey he'd need to tour the site a bit longer. Soon, a staff member approached the actors, asking them to sign posters. Surprised by the quantity, the actors learned from the staffer that 50 viewers would receive signed posters and booklets. The teaser had drawn more attention than anticipated, leading to a longer press conference, more entertainment news appearances, and a packed schedule. Though everyone grumbled about fatigue, Harvey felt invigorated. His first poster, his first signature, felt only excitement, not exhaustion. The director ordered the completion of the posters and booklets, and Harvey complied. The director then instructed the crew to set up cameras, summon reporters, and confirm all actors' presence, including Patrick's. A crew member verified Patrick had arrived. With that, the director formally announced the project's presentation launch. A journalist approached Harvey, and the star courteously invited him to pose his question. The reporter voiced curiosity about whispers that the script underwent substantial changes post-audition. Harvey responded graciously, noting that the director had been generous to him, but he felt the revisions were intended to enhance the story's framework. He also seized the moment to express gratitude to the director and writer. Following the press event, stories about the Train to Youth project started surfacing online in real time. The primary trailer, meant to highlight the lead characters, featured Harvey's face more frequently than anticipated. Consequently, articles mentioning him garnered far more attention than he had foreseen, and Harvey felt genuine delight scrolling through them on his phone. Later, Ingrid approached him, proposing a small cast gathering. Harvey inquired if it would be just the actors or if the director would attend as well. Ingrid replied that the director was unavailable, tied up in a script discussion with the writer. Shortly after, Hunter asked Harvey if he was heading home. Harvey responded by asking if he could join the cast get-together. Ingrid and Kendrick eagerly urged Hunter to come along, expressing their desire to spend time with him. Hunter agreed but cautioned them to behave responsibly. Harvey then excitedly shared the news with the group. Ingrid, upon hearing it, was visibly thrilled and brightened up, pleased that they could finally let loose and drink heartily. At the restaurant, Harvey was asked at the entrance whose name the reservation was under. He answered that it was booked under Ingrid's name. The receptionist then directed him to the group's location. He joined his colleagues, who were already waiting. Ingrid asked if he'd had trouble locating the place, remarking that the bar's exterior was distinctive. Harvey said it wasn't difficult to find, though he initially mistook it for something other than a bar. He then asked if everyone had arrived, as it seemed some were absent. His question created a palpable unease among those present. Harvey grinned, apologized, and suggested that any tension might stem from him and Miller, noting that filming must have been awkward. Ingrid reassured him that misunderstandings were typical in groups, mentioning that their team often faced conflicts that were later resolved. She expressed hope that Harvey and Miller could reach a similar resolution. Harvey explained that Miller had a challenging personality, often demanding special attention to feel content. He speculated that Miller might not have expected to land the lead role and could be harboring resentment. Still, Harvey emphasized that he didn't want to badmouth someone absent and apologized if he'd caused discomfort. Kendrick assured him all was well, and Ingrid admitted she was unaware of the situation, advising Harvey not to dwell on it. Harvey took accountability, promising to work on mending the relationship. Ingrid appreciated his attitude and suggested they order something. Penelope eagerly proposed sake, calling it the perfect choice. From there, the party kicked off. After a few drinks, Kendrick felt woozy and wondered aloud why he was so affected. Harvey steadied him, advising moderation and looking out for his well-being. But Kendrick, now quite tipsy, gazed at Harvey with envy, lamenting that he was the only one yet to complete his military service. The thought overwhelmed him, and he broke into tears. Watching this, Harvey reflected that many don't grasp how tough it is to be a struggling soldier. Yet, seeing his co-stars including a renowned model and a famous idol in this state, he realized they were just ordinary young people seeking connection. Later, Harvey asked Ingrid if her acting career was prompted by her agency. She clarified that it was her own decision, as her role in the group had grown uncertain, pushing her to explore new paths. Harvey concluded that this might have been her only way to thrive in a harsh, competitive world where everyone vies for success. He felt no right to judge her. Instead, he admired her remarkable talent and dedication. He also empathized with the emotions likely driving her choices. After a while, he grew curious about how Kendrick entered acting. Kendrick shared that his company, deeming his striking appearance too valuable to waste, encouraged him to try acting. With some self-deprecation, he admitted he wasn't particularly skilled and once heard a director suggest his best role was to simply stand still on set. Harvey surmised that the director had likely done his best. Soon, Kendrick surprised Harvey by asking him to teach him acting. Harvey was taken aback, unsure why Kendrick chose him. Kendrick explained that the team viewed Harvey as a peerless master of line memorization, a director's favorite who nailed roles in one take without errors. He confessed to feeling a bit jealous and asked earnestly how Harvey memorized entire scripts. Harvey modestly deflected, saying he didn't quite follow their point. Kendrick then shared that the crew had discussed this phenomenon, noting that Miss Juno once said she'd never seen Harvey rehearse or even hold a script. Kendrick found it strange, as most actors carry scripts even after memorizing lines. Penelope chimed in, confirming she'd never seen Harvey with a script in hand. Ingrid then voiced a suspicion that something about it felt mysterious. When did Harvey study, if not in the car? Scrutinizing him, she guessed he was hiding something. Harvey, genuinely perplexed, said he couldn't grasp what they were implying. Ingrid proposed another theory. Perhaps Harvey had extraordinary mental abilities, allowing him to memorize scripts after a single read. This idea eased his mind slightly. Penelope laughed, suggesting Harvey was likely just diligently practicing at home. But Ingrid insisted she truly believed he was exceptionally intelligent. Kendrick, eager to uncover the truth, suggested Harvey might be a graduate of Seoul National University or even Harvard, calling him a rare, once-in-a-generation genius. Ingrid, slightly annoyed, said she enjoyed the detective-like guessing game. Harvey countered that discussing training was dull and that he preferred being seen as a genius who didn't need to try. Ingrid, amused, teased with a playful tone that she'd pretend not to notice anything. The four lifted their glasses, clinked them together, and settled in to savor the evening. Penelope and Ingrid quickly realized they'd gone overboard with their drinks. Harvey, observing their increasingly cheerful and relaxed demeanor, felt a wave of relief that he'd skillfully steered the conversation away from a tricky topic. Still, he made a mental note to tread more cautiously in such discussions moving forward. The following morning, on the set, he glanced around curiously and mused aloud about whether the vibe on other projects was always like this. Deep down, he knew they had to wrap filming at least through the 4th episode before the premiere aired. The director explained that much hinges on the unique style of the director and the nature of the project. Each person has their own method, and that's just how it was this time. Harvey noticed that Juno and Hunter appeared exhausted, likely because they'd started work at the crack of dawn. Hunter clarified that it was their duty to look after the film crew. He added that they were fortunate not to be on Miller's set, where the mood was fraught and tense. He even cautioned Harvey to avoid landing in a similar predicament, prompting Harvey to wonder if early project delays had forced the team into a frantic pace. This, in turn, sparked heightened stress and grumbling among the actors and crew. The girls, already drained from the party, were at their breaking point and desperate to head home. Just then, an announcement came that they were moving to the next scene. Harvey, however, stood amidst the crowd, seemingly unsure of his next move. Suddenly, he heard his name called. It was the director summoning him for the next scene. In that moment, he felt a surge of opportunity to shine. Mentally, he rallied himself, reminding himself how thrilled he was to be on set, doing what he loved. At last, December 8th arrived Monday, the premiere day. The director gathered everyone before a screen, expressing gratitude for their hard work. To celebrate, he proposed they unwind with a tasty drink. Kendrick asked if that meant a day off from filming tomorrow. The director clarified that shooting would continue, but they could relax as much as they wanted afterward. He glanced at Harvey, noting that this was nearly his debut and that his parents must be proud. Harvey quipped that his friends, and especially his mother, were probably already glued to their TVs. Then Ingrid, brimming with excitement, urged everyone to focus. She announced that the opening sequence had begun. The group agreed that the opening was stunning, with a soundtrack perfectly tailored to the show. Hunter approached Harvey, praising him as a talented actor and congratulating him on his debut. Harvey thanked him, noting that the broadcast would start right after the opening credits, and Hunter's timing was spot on. Hunter laughed, boasting about his impeccable sense of timing, and suggested they dive into watching. He called it their first viewing and asked everyone to pay attention. The group watched the screen eagerly, and soon they saw Miller's character telling a girl he believed their feelings were mutual only to discover that wasn't the case. Meanwhile, the director scrutinized every detail of the film. One of the girls pointed out that an actor's cuff was unbuttoned in one scene, advising more attention to detail going forward. Ingrid took the critique to heart. Watching himself on screen, Harvey felt a profound connection to his performance, as if his acting was an extension of his very being. He held his breath, unwilling to miss a single moment. A heart-wrenching scene unfolded on screen at that moment. Afterward, everyone resumed watching. Harvey was delighted to realize his joy went beyond seeing himself on screen. He appreciated how the series highlighted the actors' strengths while subtly masking their weaknesses. The final montage powerfully conveyed the drama's core message. A crew member remarked that the series was already trending among the most discussed topics. Harvey checked the trends and saw the audience's reactions, thinking they might have a shot at climbing to second place in the rankings. The next morning, Harvey woke with a pounding head and dizziness. He instantly regretted the previous night, recalling how he'd gotten caught up in the festive mood and drank too much. He scolded himself for following the director's pace, especially since Juno and the group leader had joined in the drinking marathon, which lasted until the fifth toast. Now, he vowed never to touch alcohol again. Entering the room, he saw that Patrick and Hunter were clearly suffering from the effects of their drinks. They insisted they'd made it home safely, though. Looking around, Harvey realized no one was feeling great. Moments later, Juno arrived. Harvey greeted her courteously, and she responded, asking why he hadn't come inside yet. He nodded and headed into the room. Approaching Hunter, Juno teased if they'd made a sixth toast without her. Pale and visibly unwell, Hunter begged her not to jest, admitting he felt awful. Observing Juno, Harvey felt a growing curiosity about her, which gradually blossomed into genuine admiration. At that moment, the group leader assembled the team and, skipping pleasantries, got straight to business. He announced that their show, Trained to Youth, had the lowest ratings this week among the three major channels. He noted that Love Online had taken the lead with a 9.2% rating, leaving Harvey mildly stunned. The director explained that this was expected, as competing shows had been airing longer and built a loyal audience. He predicted their numbers might dip further next week and advised focusing on their real rival, the drama Beautiful Love, which aired in the same time slot. Harvey reflected on Beautiful Love, which had garnered buzz before its release, due to A-list star Hannah in the lead role. Yet, despite the hype, it only scored an 8.7% rating, which Harvey called underwhelming. Still, he saw a silver lining. With smart and strategic moves, their team could still climb the rankings. Patrick noted that despite being the first broadcast, viewer feedback was largely positive, and he expressed hope that the show could recover. Miller, however, was less optimistic, his tone sharp. He muttered that, with a director who operated so chaotically from the start, success was unlikely. The director tried to diffuse the tension, urging the team not to obsess over ratings that was the producer's job. Their focus should be on acting. Visibly frustrated, Miller turned and declared it was time to get back to filming. The manager commented on his exit, noting that tension was starting to surface within the team. Harvey, letting out a small sigh, agreed. He watched Miller leave. The director turned to him, asking why he was still there if he had no scenes to shoot that day. Harvey silently gestured toward a pile of scripts nearby. The surprised manager followed his gaze, and Harvey confirmed those were the scripts he'd been studying. Patrick admitted he'd never met someone so dedicated and driven. Harvey shared that he'd already finished reading the scripts he'd been given earlier. Even more astonished, the manager asked if he'd truly read them all. Harvey nodded confidently, adding that none of the characters in those scripts had truly captivated him. Patrick started to question whether he had thoroughly reviewed the scripts, while Harvey silently acknowledged that he had not only read them, but had nearly committed each one to memory. The director pointed out a character named Paul, suggesting it was an ideal role for Harvey. However, Harvey confessed that this script struck him as the least compelling of the trio. He remarked that despite the role's prominence, the character appeared rather pitiable. The genre felt overly niche, and the conclusion was, frankly, lackluster. When the discussion shifted to the other two scripts, Harvey found himself unable to provide a clear preference. At that moment, Hunter approached and commented that Harvey was quick to judge. Placing a hand on his shoulder, he suggested evaluating roles with less emotion. With a slight grin, he noted that even Juno was impressed by this approach, adding that Harvey sounded like a true film critic. Patrick, in response, advised Harvey to be particularly discerning, as his rising popularity demanded caution. Still, he concluded that nothing could be resolved immediately. He then spread out several more books and scripts before Harvey, asking if he was truly capable of managing them all. With a faint smirk, Harvey replied that 10 minutes would suffice. Skeptical, the manager pressed again, questioning if 10 minutes was really enough. As Hunter began skimming one of the scripts, he remarked that it was far from straightforward. Intrigued, Harvey asked what he was reading. Hunter responded that it was Top Dog, a film about boxers. Harvey pointed out that the project had a 91-point rating and seemed promising overall, but the protagonist was described as only 160 centimeters tall, implying the other actors would need to be at least 2 meters tall for visual harmony. Hunter then inquired if any script had truly captured Harvey's interest, to which he admitted he remained undecided. His thoughts drifted to a script titled The Kid Who Cried Wolf, the only one rated above 90, a lowbrow comedy about petty street hustlers. Harvey felt the film lacked significant potential, recognizing that quality mattered, but high ratings didn't ensure commercial success. As he was just starting to build his reputation, he knew he had to tread carefully. He yearned for a versatile project with minimal risk, but a well-defined role that could elevate his standing. Just then, Hunter handed him another script, urging him to give it a close look. Harvey gazed at the cover, where the title Fisherman stood out. Lost in thought, he was approached by the manager, who placed a hand on his shoulder and shared that the director's debut film had drawn 2.6 million viewers, with his follow-up exceeding 10.5 million. The figures were undeniable, and Patrick emphasized that Harvey should take this project seriously, asking if he was prepared to commit. Harvey began to consider that a director with a film attracting 10 million viewers held immense box office pull. Yet, the script's modest ratings sparked some doubts. Sensing his uncertainty, the executive quickly reassured him that securing the role wouldn't be an issue. Their company had prior ties with the production team, ensuring Harvey at least an audition for a supporting part. Surprised by this development, Harvey asked if it was truly so difficult for a newcomer to land a lead role. Patrick explained that the starring role was already cast Charlie, a child star with exceptional talent. With him involved, a newcomer's chances of claiming the top spot were virtually non-existent. Harvey nodded, agreeing that he needed to earn recognition first. He realized that despite the project's artistic debates, the combination of a renowned director and a celebrated actor was formidable. The manager added that if Harvey chose to pursue the role, he'd need to act fast due to fierce competition. Reflecting on these words, Harvey considered that if rapid success was the goal, Ryback seemed a logical choice. Yet, a sense of unease lingered within him. At that point, Hunter asked if another project was pulling him more strongly. Harvey admitted that, among all the options, the independent film resonated most with him. Hunter noted that if Sappa was indeed behind the indie project, it could be a significant opportunity, particularly if Harvey could secure the lead. Harvey sought clarification, asking if SAPA was truly a film academy, and Hunter confirmed it, adding that SAPA operated on a level far above most indie productions. Even in the independent film world, SAPA's involvement carried substantial weight. The distributor was a major player, the program was elite, and many renowned directors were alumni. Naturally, the competition was intense. This clarity helped Harvey understand the project's high rating. Though its full potential wasn't explicitly outlined, he realized hesitation was pointless. Turning to Patrick with a smile, the manager asked again if he was choosing Ryback. Harvey stepped closer and, with a broad grin and unwavering confidence, declared he would take on both projects. Later that evening in the car, Juno remarked that she was struck by the conviction with which Harvey had tossed the script onto the table. She teased that beneath his unassuming demeanor lay bold ambitions. Slightly embarrassed by her playful jabs, Harvey gently asked Juno to ease up, while their driver Hunter chuckled. Just then, Hunter received a call. The conversation was brief, and as soon as it ended, he informed Harvey that representatives from the Fisherman Project had reached out. Thanks to Patrick's efforts, Harvey had secured an audition invitation. Curious, Harvey pressed for more details, and Hunter shared that it was an exclusive casting where all he needed to do was perform spontaneously in an improvised style. As the final casting was still pending, a strong performance could land him a major role. Juno commented that she ought to review Ryback's script, and Harvey, surprised, asked if she hadn't read it yet. She responded that she was waiting for confirmation of his involvement, just as she was now. He pointed out that he was far from being selected since he hadn't even auditioned yet. Juno, however, expressed confidence that he would ace it. Parker nodded in agreement with her sentiment. Juno was pleased that everyone shared her view. Buoyed by their support, Harvey grinned, nodded, and admitted he now had to meet their expectations. Then he turned to Hunter with a question about the Shepherd project, asking if there was any response. Hunter mentioned he'd sent his portfolio via email, and though there was no official reply yet, the email had been opened, so a response was expected soon. Hearing this, Juno concluded that Harvey must really want the starring role. He admitted it was plain to see. Perhaps he was hoping for too much, given he only had one line and was mentoring the younger actors behind him, still very much a novice. Even if it was a low-budget film, the lead role wasn't easy to snag. Glancing out the window, he noticed snowflakes gently beginning to drift past the glass. Wanting to lift his spirits, Hunter remarked that Harvey was still young and shouldn't fret. He assured him things were moving in the right direction and that they were fortunate. It was a rare moment when they could pause for Christmas. The snow fell beautifully, and it was worth savoring while it lasted. Next year, there'd likely be little time or energy for such moments. Harvey gazed at the snow again and gave a small smile, agreeing. As they sat in the car, Hunter turned to Harvey and reminded him it was Christmas, asking if he had any plans now that filming had wrapped. Harvey confessed he hadn't given it much thought. Hunter teased that he might be planning a discreet rendezvous with a secret lover, but Harvey quickly denied it. Laughing, Hunter asked if he was heading back to the company. After glancing around, Harvey offered to drive him to Sadanga. Hunter clarified if he meant visiting his parents, and Harvey confirmed. Then Hunter suggested a trip to the mall. Surprised, Harvey asked why, and Hunter reminded him he should have received payment for the first 2 episodes. Since he hadn't seen his parents in a while, showing up empty-handed would be improper. Agreeing, Harvey decided to swing by the store. After shopping, he reflected on finally bringing something for his parents. Except for the day he was cast, he always found excuses, blaming work, and rarely visited home. Even now, despite the gifts, he felt he'd probably still get a scolding. Entering the house, he was greeted by his parents sitting together. His mother lit up when she saw him. Beaming, she called him a true star, showering him with praise, asking if he was too busy and if filming had finally ended. Harvey explained he had some free time today and chose to visit. He handed over the gifts, warning that he might have misjudged the sizes and picked something randomly. His mother teased that at least he didn't grab them off the street, and his father asked if they were too costly. Harvey reassured them he'd paid with his earnings, so there was no cause for concern. His parents tried on the clothes, noting the sizes were perfect. Deep down, he admitted he shouldn't have put off this visit so long. Noticing his expression, his mother asked why he was staring at her like that. She told him not to worry, saying he was just a son giving gifts to his parents. Harvey agreed, promising to bring something even better next time. His mother invited him to sit, reminding him his drama was about to air and suggesting they watch together. When an alarm sounded, Harvey asked his father what was up. He explained it was his mother's doing. She set an alarm no matter when she went out, morning or night, to avoid missing an episode. Her dedication warmed Harvey's heart. His father added he'd had to talk her out of hanging a huge banner to support the show. Just then, his mother returned, catching their conversation, and asked if they were talking about her while she looked for her phone. Harvey swiftly changed the topic, handed her the phone, and pointed to the screen the drama was starting. As it began, his mother pointed at the screen, recognizing the actress as Ingrid, noting her pleasant demeanor and good manners. She even joked it'd be nice to invite her over someday. Harvey, surprised, asked why she mentioned Ingrid. His mother then recalled Penelope, asking if she was his girlfriend. Harvey clarified she was just his character's girlfriend, but his mother waved it off, saying it was practically the same, and teased that he always acted aloof. She then commented on Miller, saying his performance felt unconvincing, and asked if something happened on set. Harvey shook his head, but inwardly, he was amazed at his mother's keen eye for detail. At that moment, his phone showed an incoming call from Hunter. He told his mother he urgently needed to take it. Surprised, as there was no filming today, he was stunned when he read the message, a letter from director Pastuk at Safa. He immediately called Hunter back to verify its authenticity. Hunter confirmed that director Parker had reviewed Harvey's portfolio and personally requested a one-on-one meeting, showing genuine interest and advising him to give it his all next year. Harvey thanked him wholeheartedly. Turning to his mother, he apologized for the interruption, saying it was nothing major. She squeezed his hand with a warm smile, saying she didn't know the details but felt relieved. It seemed things were finally looking up. Harvey nodded, feeling that his career was indeed starting to gain traction. As CEO Patrick had forecasted, the ratings made a complete turnaround in the latter half of 2024, and now they were firmly at the top. Ultimately, Larry clinched the award for Best New Actor. However, Harvey paid little heed to this achievement. His own drama was enjoying significantly higher viewership. While the protagonist sat in his car mulling over this, his partner broke his train of thought. Hunter remarked that director Patrick possessed remarkable charisma, and Harvey nodded, agreeing that it was unmistakable. Hunter further commented that the script showcased a keen, intuitive understanding, sharply exposing societal flaws. As Harvey read through it, he sensed a cynical perspective on reality woven into the text. It vividly portrayed a hero who transcended all social conventions. The underworld was captured with astonishing accuracy, as if penned by a psychopath or someone on the fringes. The script carried a distinct atmosphere, reminiscent in some ways of Harvey Schopenhauer. Later, Harvey met with director Parker, the script's writer, who greeted him with exceptional warmth. After exchanging pleasantries, they settled at a table to talk over a meal. The director expressed deep appreciation that an actor of Harvey's caliber was interested in his project. He confessed that when he sent proposals to agencies, he hadn't dared hope to collaborate with someone of such stature. With genuine enthusiasm, Parker began praising Harvey, declaring that he was starring in one of the most buzzed-about dramatic projects of the moment. Harvey was taken aback. He hadn't anticipated such high regard from the director. Parker likened their meeting to catching a Red Sea bass, a rare, elegant fish symbolizing luck, reserved for the most determined fishermen. He emphasized that Harvey's appearance and demeanor exuded both beauty and refinement. Parker explained that Harvey was precisely the actor he'd been searching for, embodying an inner charisma veiled by a playful, carefree facade charisma that could electrify the screen and lend real intensity to scenes. He noted that Harvey's unique look, dramatic flair, and commanding acting presence perfectly matched the character audiences would soon meet. With candid sincerity, Parker admitted he was eager to work with him. Harvey, visibly touched, thanked the director for his kind words and unwavering belief in him. But Parker, adopting a serious expression, shifted to practical matters. He explained that while the project was envisioned as a feature film with an approved budget, he might not be able to offer the salary an actor of Harvey's level typically commanded. Harvey, upon hearing this, merely smiled and confidently replied that if money were his sole concern, he'd have joined a major TV network long ago. He stressed that what drew him wasn't the contract's value, but the vision embedded in Parker's work and the passion with which he spoke about the film. That was what compelled him to join. Parker then unveiled the full concept. He declared that the film, titled The Shepherd, had the potential to not only resonate with audiences, but also mark a turning point in the actors' careers. He revealed that the film was already slated for submission to both domestic and international festivals, expressing unwavering confidence that it would earn acclaim and prestigious awards. According to him, participating in this project could only elevate Harvey's career, opening new doors. Listening intently, Harvey noted to himself that, unlike many directors for whom art had become a calculated game of manipulation and compromise, Parker stood out for his authentic sincerity. He already knew he'd joined the project. The decision had solidified before they even left the restaurant. He playfully remarked that he'd need to buy a suit for the festival red carpets. Parker, blushing in disbelief, began bowing repeatedly, thanking the protagonist profusely. Harvey countered that if anyone deserved thanks, it was himself, feeling privileged to be part of such an extraordinary project. He wasn't exaggerating. The Shepherd possessed a rare inner strength seldom found in scripts. The character Hank wasn't just compelling, he was vividly alive, multifaceted, and deeply moving. The story's message was potent and untainted, and Harvey couldn't help but admire what former SAPA students had achieved. Curious, he asked if Parker had other works. Parker replied candidly, admitting he'd never formally studied directing. However, a short film created for his portfolio during admissions had earned him several awards. Reflecting on it now, he found it somewhat pretentious and was a bit embarrassed, but he acknowledged that it sparked his drive to work harder and grow. Harvey thought that for someone without formal training to create something award-worthy spoke to an innate talent that could only be honed, not taught. He reassured Parker that there was no cause for concern. The script itself reflected his dedication and genuine intent. Harvey was eager for filming to begin and urged the director not to stress unnecessarily. Smiling warmly, Parker noted that Harvey had given him the confidence he'd been lacking lately. Harvey responded gently that it was because Parker was a good person. Slightly flustered by the candid compliment, Parker paused before raising another question. He asked if Harvey could recommend any actor friends. Harvey raised an eyebrow, surprised, wondering if casting wasn't yet complete. Parker nodded, admitting with some hesitation that, while he'd reviewed many actors, most stood out for their appearance alone. He was seeking a rarer talented actor with an unconventional, almost eccentric approach, capable of fully embodying diverse roles. Harvey, pondering this, stood up with sudden resolve and said he might know someone perfect for the part. He requested time to speak with them personally to confirm their availability. Parker, visibly excited, agreed immediately, promising to make room if the actor was on board. Afterward, Harvey contacted his friend Lindsay, who instantly declared he'd quit his job for the role. Later, when the conversation ended, Harvey rejoined Hunter. He suggested Hunter relax and, if it helped, wait outside with Juno for a bit. Juno, backing the idea, added that there was no harm in it. But Harvey disagreed, insisting they enter together as a team. Soon, they arrived at the restaurant for lunch. Juno's eyes lit up at the sight of dishes appearing on the table, her mood instantly lifting. Hunter, unable to resist, remarked with a slight smirk that without Harvey, things could have turned out far worse. It was Harvey who pulled him out of his withdrawn state. Then, a restaurant employee named Lindsay approached them. He bent forward a bit and, with a sheepish grin, mentioned they'd run out of chicken wings. Noticing the waiter's weary look, Harvey suggested he take a moment to sit and relax. Lindsay, however, responded with assurance, saying all was well and wished everyone a hearty bon appetit, declaring lunch was on him. Turning to Harvey with warm curiosity, he asked if he'd been swamped lately. Without missing a beat, Harvey replied that he'd come simply because he missed him. Lindsay's face lit up with a surprised smile, pointing out that Harvey hadn't just shown up alone, he'd brought Hunter and even a stylist along. Harvey, slightly stung, insisted he was entirely serious. With playful sarcasm, Lindsay called him a rascal for getting famous and neglecting the shop. Observing Lindsay, Harvey thought to himself that he still seemed content. Yet, beneath that simple joy, there was a trace of sorrow. Convincing someone who appeared so satisfied with life to return to acting was no easy task. He recalled how, years ago, he'd struggled to even broach the subject with Lindsay. A pang of regret stirred within him. Then, Lindsay admitted the idea sounded enticing and genuinely intriguing. In that moment, Harvey knew he needed to have a real conversation. He told his friend that only success and fame awaited him. Lindsay apologized, saying he was just feeling a touch nostalgic. Then Harvey decided it was time to share what had been lingering on his mind. He confessed he'd been mulling it over for a while and had concluded Lindsay didn't belong in sales. Harvey believed no one he knew had the same knack for transformative acting. So he boldly invited Lindsay to join him on the screen, to act in the film together once more. Later, as they sat in the car, Harvey's eyes were glued to the script. He reflected on how hard he'd worked to persuade Lindsay to join the project. Their talk, as it turned out, had been somewhat clumsy. He knew he hadn't gotten a flat-out no, but neither had he secured a yes. Still, despite his unease, he chose not to spiral into pointless speculation, letting out a relieved breath. At that moment, Hunter was on the phone, his tone suggesting the conversation wasn't going well. When it ended, Hunter hung up with a frustrated expression. Harvey asked if everything was all right. With a scowl, Hunter muttered that he was fed up with it all. He grumbled that Miller had messed everything up. They stepped out of the car and immediately sensed the heavy atmosphere. The set was thick with tension, faces etched with worry and confusion. Observing the scene, Harvey couldn't help but ask why the crew was in such a state. An assistant director approached, apologizing to Harvey for dragging him into the mess. Remaining composed, Harvey urged him to stay calm and keep it together. Hunter, eager to understand, asked what had happened. The assistant explained that a major clash had erupted between the director and an actor that morning. At one point, Miller started complaining again, only to be told he should have known his dialogue had changed. No one could fathom why he was using the old script. It was unacceptable, as he'd caused numerous bad takes. Miller, however, denied any fault, arguing they should have given the actors time to learn the new lines. Now, everyone was at a loss, unsure how to proceed. The assistant added that Miller's manager was in a slump, sitting in the car. Hunter remarked that maybe Miller shouldn't have been given so little time to prepare. He wasn't slow, especially with memorizing lines, but this situation was tough. Harvey pieced it together. One scene had been cut, replaced with 2 new lines that either streamlined or complicated the story. If Miller had asked for more time, that would have made sense. A question crossed Harvey's mind about why the director made those changes to begin with. The assistant, sounding slightly exhausted, announced the script had been updated and they were about to resume filming. When Harvey asked how long it would take, the assistant estimated just over an hour. Harvey gave a small smile, feeling the situation was dragging on too long. He resolved to address the issue with Miller. The assistant continued, explaining that the inability to keep filming had left Kendrick and the crew stuck, as the location rental was tightly scheduled. If they couldn't wrap up that day, the shoot might be pushed back a week. Hunter couldn't hide his shock. The assistant apologized again, saying he'd tried to handle it himself, but Miller's manager wasn't answering calls or responding, despite repeated attempts. The team had done their best to turn things around, but the effort was draining everyone emotionally and physically. In silence, Harvey reflected that such conflicts were all too common in the film world. These disputes felt like a signal, pushing them away not just from the director and crew but from their own team. Hunter, grasping the gravity of the situation, declared he'd go sort it out himself. He asked the assistant to keep pre-production going and Harvey to join him. Harvey, however, told him to hold off, saying they weren't obligated to step in. But seeing Hunter's serious expression, he froze. Without looking at him, Hunter quietly asked Harvey to come along. Sometime later, Miller arrived at the set in a car. A crew member remarked it was time to get moving and start working. Still buried in his script, Miller sharply told him to be quiet, saying he wouldn't budge until he'd memorized every line. A weary crew member reminded him the director was insistent, pointing out the strict location rental limits. Irritated, Miller snapped back, telling the crew member to stop whining. He said if he was so clever, he could memorize the script and act in his place. Miller accused the crew of dodging responsibility and failing to support the actors they were supposed to help. He warned that if they didn't want to be chewed out by their bosses, they needed to do their jobs right. At that moment, Hunter stepped into the scene. Miller, too caught up in his rant, didn't notice him and kept yelling about how the crew just pointed fingers. Hunter leaned toward Miller's car window with a smile, catching his attention. He calmly asked what was going on. Pointing at his script with clear frustration, Miller vented about the script issues, but Hunter quickly grasped the root of the conflict. He noted it had been dragging on for over an hour and questioned why 3 lines were causing such a fuss. He suggested Miller just get it done and move forward. Miller swore in response, and Hunter, taken aback by his bluntness, asked him to repeat himself. Miller began questioning Hunter's loyalty, reminding him he was supposed to support him, not the director. He accused Hunter of bullying him instead of doing his job. Harvey, watching this heated exchange, was floored by Miller's attitude. To him, leadership didn't mean abandoning decency or leaving things to chance. In his view, Hunter was just trying to help. Yet, with every word, Miller distanced himself from those genuinely trying to back him. Fed up, Harvey grabbed Miller by the collar, demanding he show respect to those around him. He asked pointedly whose manager Hunter was, Miller's or his own. Barely containing his anger, Miller explained he was still working on memorizing the script and asked not to be rushed. He demanded to be let go, clearly unhappy with the situation. In that moment, Harvey realized something he'd been reluctant to admit. On the verge of stepping onto the set, he saw clearly that Miller, once an ideal leader in their eyes, was merely a flashy newcomerpolist on the surface but lacking true substance. Harvey felt a wave of shame for ever admiring him. Following this, he faced him once more. Miller, with a haughty expression, questioned what he desired. Miller then declared that apologies at this point were futile. Yet, the hero cautioned him not to assume he could act freely. Furthermore, they weren't alone in this place. He described Miller as a prideful individual who needed to accept critique. He added that even if multiple takes were recorded, it wouldn't alter the outcome. Even repeating the same dialogue several times, he doubted it would improve Miller's performance. Miller was stunned, unable to fathom that such words were directed at him. Everyone glanced sideways, curious about the source of this tension. Upon closer inspection, the group noticed Miller clutching Harvey's collar, attempting to yank him closer. Harvey, feigning innocence, asked his adversary why he was acting this way. Hunter stepped toward Miller, urging him to relax and release Harvey. Ignoring the plea, Miller curtly told Hunter to stay out of it, questioning what he even understood about the situation. The director's patience waned, and he loudly instructed his assistant to halt filming. The assistant inquired if he was certain, after which he noted that Miller seemed unwilling to perform. He asked who would take responsibility if Miller harmed Harvey. Meanwhile, Harvey smirked slyly, convinced his scheme had perfectly unfolded. He hadn't lifted a finger, yet everything proceeded flawlessly. To him, even the director's impassioned speech seemed like a meticulously crafted script. A crew member approached Miller, placing a hand on his shoulder to soothe him, reminding him of a promise made after the last incident. Another person stepped forward, offering a handshake and expressing gratitude for Miller's efforts. Miller spun around arrogantly, believing this was a minor role. Without returning the handshake, he snapped that they were all incredibly irritating. This infuriated his counterpart, who, fed up with Miller's attitude, approached him, turned him around, and called him an arrogant fool. He then demanded Miller listen closely, stating that after the prior incident, they vowed to finish filming regardless of obstacles. The assistant director walked over, placing a hand on Miller's shoulder again for a sincere talk. He urged Miller to be wiser and consider the repercussions of his actions. Miller swore, admitting he struggled to memorize lines so quickly. He also confessed that staying here was exhausting due to the people around him. Hunter stepped forward, drawing everyone's attention, and reminded them it was time for lunch. The group eagerly agreed, admitting their hunger. The famished cast and crew dubbed Hunter the finest colleague they'd ever had. With a weary sigh, Hunter remarked that if the drama was done, they could finally eat. As Harvey moved to join his friend, the director himself stopped him. Surprised, Harvey couldn't believe such a prominent figure was addressing him directly. The director invited him to dine together, quickly closing the gap between them. In the dining area, the director offered to buy Harvey an expensive meal and thanked him. After a brief silence, the director asked Harvey's thoughts on the recent set incident. Harvey clammed up when asked to clarify. The director then apologized, noting it wasn't a suitable lunch topic. Seizing the moment, Harvey said that despite the chaotic shoot, he viewed it as a chance. When the director pressed for clarification, Harvey explained that until recently, he feared he'd never get such an opportunity. Impressed by this grandiose speech, the director fell silent, pondering deeply. With a tone of mock sorrow, Harvey shared that as an extra, no one ever invited him for a stroll. He recalled a friend's words about how vital invitations were for unknown extras. From his perspective, even offers to join a shoot were significant. He added that even without lines, being asked back to film was a gift. Harvey reflected on how he'd conveyed these emotions so precisely. He noted that famous actors, always invited, didn't grasp the struggle. He drifted into a thoughtful silence, grappling with how he had expressed his feelings so well. The young man further remarked that prominent actors, constantly invited to shoots, were unaware of this struggle. Smiling, he said he'd made his point clearly. Harvey then grinned, affirming he understood the sentiment perfectly. He reflected that he once believed he'd never get another role, always facing rejection. But a miraculous event changed his life, granting him opportunities others no longer had. Watching lesser-known actors thank the director for including them, Harvey felt a profound responsibility. One actor greeted him, calling him Sunbae. Harvey mused that this miracle had given him a role that might have gone to someone more talented. Still, he wasn't about to squander this chance handed to him. Thus, he resolved to show great respect to the man who once stood where he had. Stepping toward his colleague, he caused a moment of awkwardness as the man looked at him in surprise. Harvey smiled warmly, assuring his co-star they'd meet again on set soon. The actor, taken aback by Harvey's kindness, froze, trying to shake off his shyness. Harvey, smiling, noted he might have delayed him, praised his work, and sent him off. The director, observing this, grinned and commended Harvey, surprising him slightly. The director added that Harvey's actions had helped him make a crucial decision. Soon, Harvey's name began appearing in news headlines, and he wondered if this was the director's doing. He noticed the director increasingly expanded his screen time, which drastically reduced Miller's role. This sparked intense jealousy, and Miller began eyeing Harvey like a predator sizing up its target. Harvey, contemplative, was accustomed to this and felt more sympathy for the director. Later, a phone call came, and Harvey answered promptly, asking how he could assist. The director, surprised filming hadn't wrapped, mentioned Harvey's new casting call. Harvey replied that idleness was tough for him. The director expressed gratitude for the excellent scenes he had captured and inquired whether he would soon arrive at the casting venue. Harvey responded that he was nearly there, and the director wished him well for the casting. Harvey asked if there was anything further he could assist with, then mentioned the director's name with a grin. Following a brief silence, the director remarked that he looked forward to seeing him on set. Harvey, with a pleased smile, confirmed they would definitely meet again. Sometime later, the scene shifted to an office building where an actor casting was underway. Harvey felt a touch of nervousness as he entered the room, his first time there in quite a while. The reason was the unexpectedly large crowd that had shown up for the casting. In his mind, Harvey admitted he had hoped for a private casting session when someone suddenly called out to him. He turned toward the voice and spotted the general manager, who asked if filming had already wrapped up. Harvey grinned and explained that shooting had just concluded, and Hunter chimed in, noting how busy Harvey had been. They both complimented Harvey, remarking that he had matured into an outstanding actor who wasn't afraid of hard work. Harvey inquired about the situation and why so many people were present, wondering if it was a meeting rather than a casting call. The general manager clarified that they needed to discuss matters before his casting and asked the actors to wait briefly. They also mentioned that the director was expected to arrive shortly, noting that he represented a UK entertainment agency. Harvey was stunned to learn it was one of Korea's top variety agencies, where actors were trained by Caleb, widely regarded as an industry titan. Harvey recalled seeing many of Caleb's students in major films. He realized this was no ordinary agency. It felt like stepping into an MMA arena. The general manager explained that the director wanted to meet the actors in person before casting, as they needed to be observed in action. He advised Harvey not to worry, and Harvey responded with a confident smile, assuring there would be no issue. Shortly after, the door swung open, and the director entered, carefully surveying the room. He apologized for the delay, admitting he hadn't expected such a large turnout of actors that day. Taking his seat, the director expressed his delight at meeting everyone present. After a brief pause, he introduced himself as Howard and shared his appreciation for the strong interest in his project. He noted that he would have loved to speak with each actor individually, but due to time constraints, they needed to move forward with the project discussion. He revealed that the film, titled The Fisherman, centered on a prosecutor chasing an insurance fraudster known as the Fisherman, blending action and comedy. Howard described the plot as fast-moving, filled with surprising twists, and intended to be both thrilling and lighthearted. Harvey reflected that the director was a visionary with 10 million views, so the project was bound to attract significant attention. Howard outlined the lead roles, and one actor realized only supporting roles and extras remained. Howard confirmed this was precisely what he wanted to address, expressing hope that they would select candidates for the project that day. He added that the turnout of talented actors gave him confidence in the casting's success. Leaning on the table, Howard concluded the briefing, noting that the casting would take place in the adjacent room, with actors called in one by one. Harvey smiled, thinking the setup sounded absolutely fantastic. As Howard headed toward the door, he overheard the actors murmuring, questioning their own abilities. He also mentioned that the film's lead actor, Joe, had requested to observe the casting and would be present. The actors exchanged shocked glances, hardly believing what they'd heard. Howard grinned, wished everyone good luck, and exited, leaving them in stunned silence. Harvey knew the casting included some of the industry's true icons, and with Joe judging the auditions, the tension was palpable.
The performers conversed among themselves, recognizing that the reactions of the principal actors carried even greater weight than those of the director. Harvey was aware that Joe, with his 17 years of acting experience, was a seasoned professional whose involvement would surely guarantee the project's commercial triumph. The actor's sway matched that of the director, and Harvey was determined to win him over to gain the upper hand. He knew the leading actors were certain to draw crowds to the box office, and he desperately wanted that success. Harvey tightened his fist, struggling to suppress his nervous habits. The head manager placed a hand on his shoulder, inquiring why he seemed rooted to the spot. With a smile, Harvey assured him there was no cause for concern, as Joe was a decent person. Harvey understood that his top priority was to display his unique flair to catch the director's attention. For an actor, this flair defined their identity, yet it could also impede their career progression. Harvey mused that even if he highlighted his talents, he still needed something distinctive to stand out. Scratching his jaw, he turned to his manager to propose an idea, but was cut off by another actor who remarked that most were preparing to portray either a gangster or a detective. Harvey nodded, agreeing that the observation was accurate. He knew it risked being too predictable, despite having prepared for the role himself. Deep down, Harvey admitted he struggled to grasp the emotions of the actors on stage. Still, this never prevented him from imagining how it would appear from the audience's perspective. He was fully aware that interest in such roles would soon wane, as the actors would all seem too similar. After some reflection, he concluded that in this setting, he could fully reveal his essence and the distinct style he had chosen. Later, he entered the room and was asked if his sole acting credit was a part in the movie Journey to Youth. With a calm smile, Harvey confirmed the assumption was correct. Someone questioned whether his entire career consisted of a single supporting role. Joe interjected, declaring it was time to end the fruitless questioning that wouldn't yield new insights. Fixing his gaze on Harvey, he prompted him to start his introduction. Harvey grinned, knowing he had a perfect trump card to play at that moment. He reflected that he wanted to shift the dour expressions of those around him, which is why he selected a particular genre. To achieve this, he clasped his hands in a prayer-like gesture and began to beseech the heavens as if he were a monk. Joe smirked, recognizing that Harvey was reenacting a scene from a comedic film. Harvey turned to the instructor, confessing he was unsure how to navigate the moment and seeking guidance. He mentioned he had crafted a humorous tale about a wayward monk's first love, unable to release his lingering emotions. To sell it, he feigned deep contemplation of a girl who had stolen his heart long ago. Harvey wistfully recalled his college sweetheart, alluding to the film The Grace of the Stage. Though not a blockbuster and unprofitable, the script had left audiences in stitches. Harvey continued, embodying a sorrowful monk who comically lamented his long-lost girlfriend. His performance gained intensity as he struck the floor with his hands for added authenticity. He declared that the girl consumed his thoughts, preventing him from completing his 108 prayers properly. Joe observed closely as Harvey pleaded with the divine for a sign. Lifting his face, he revealed tears streaming down his cheeks, proclaiming that for love, he sought enlightenment. This sudden shift to emotional depth stunned the lead actor, who stared at him as if he were the very mentor they sought advice from. A brief, awkward silence followed before the room erupted in soft laughter. Joe couldn't contain himself, bursting into loud laughter that echoed into the next room. Approaching Harvey, he said it was impressive, and asked what inspired it. Harvey stood, thanked him for the praise, and Joe admitted that the more he thought about it, the funnier it became. Rising from the table, Joe remarked that he feared Harvey's face would haunt him in the shower. Harvey noted the odd compliment, but sensed Joe was ready to get serious. Drawing nearer, Joe praised Harvey's remarkable acting skills. He asked for his name, and Harvey introduced himself confidently, ensuring he'd be remembered. Joe slung an arm around him and asked the director if he thought Harvey suited the role of Maggie. The director reviewed his script, weighing a significant decision. After a pause, he noted that Harvey's height was ideal, but regretfully added that Maggie's role required a mask. After further thought, he realized a more intriguing role might suit Harvey. Turning to his assistant, he requested the actors who had auditioned for the fisherman's gang roles be summoned. Joe assured they'd arrive soon, and asked Harvey if he had deliberately chosen comedy. Harvey smiled, explaining that a supporting character was meant to upstage the lead, and comedy was the perfect vehicle. Joe regarded him with respect, chuckled, and expressed his admiration. Harvey met his gaze steadily, holding his own. Joe grinned again, commending Harvey's remarkable intuition. Soon after, the director, in an impromptu moment, realized Harvey was too talented for Maggie's role. Harvey reflected that the script demanded a substantial supporting role, akin to a humorous antagonist. The director pondered further and then inquired about Harvey's thoughts on playing Mango. Joe agreed it was a solid choice, but remarked that the character's portrayal might seem somewhat juvenile. Stepping closer, he instructed Harvey to widen his eyes and grin broadly. Harvey complied, adopting a rather unsettling expression before asking the director if he'd done it correctly. The director smiled, noting it would look striking with the mask, as Harvey excelled at acting. After some deliberation, he proposed offering Harvey the role of Mango and asked Joe if he approved. Joe confirmed he was entirely satisfied and extended his hand to Harvey. Gazing earnestly into his eyes, he inquired if he was willing to collaborate. Harvey clasped hands with his respected colleague, musing on how they selected actors as swiftly as they picked lunch options. Joe expressed gratitude for the performance, admitting he was nearly dozing off from boredom, but Harvey's energy revived him. Joe mentioned he'd watched the drama Harvey starred in and asked his age. Upon learning Harvey was 28, Joe suggested they drop formalities, saying he could just call him brother. Harvey was struck by Joe's genuineness, having worried Joe might be a conceited, top-tier actor. He noticed Joe seemed to glow even standing still, the kind of presence people called star quality. Their warm exchange was cut short when the general manager called out to Harvey. Harvey asked what was up, and the manager beckoned him over briefly. The director asked if he was familiar with Mango's role, to which Harvey replied he knew it well. Mango was the youngest in Fisher's crew, a role Harvey had once tried out for. The character had Laersh's innocent look disarmed people, but his true nature was monstrous. Harvey recalled a scene where he and Fisher fled and fought, a part he'd have loved to play. Meanwhile, the director sorted out filming logistics, concluding there'd be no issues. Smiling, he said he was thrilled to hear such news. Looking at Harvey, he reiterated how much he admired his acting and persona. The general manager noted Harvey's success was all his own doing, and the director commended his hard work. After a brief pause, he announced they were done for the day, promising to follow up soon with a script reading date. Harvey grinned, saying he'd be delighted to meet the director again when a familiar voice suddenly called his name. Surprised, Harvey noted Joe addressing him so casually in front of everyone. Joe gave a sly glance, asking if they'd meet on set. Harvey, full of admiration, assured him they would. He then called Joe brother, feeling the urge to boast about it. Later, the scene shifted to a ski resort where Harvey was having a blast. He knew he'd made the right call listening to Ingrid and agreeing to ski. Soon, a familiar voice asked if he was skilled at sports. Harvey turned shyly, saying it was no big deal, just enjoying the slopes. But soon, loud laughter erupted, and he realized trouble was brewing. A large group of colleagues zoomed past, skiing joyfully. They sped by so fast Harvey couldn't count them, but he glanced their way to check for injuries. Kendrick leaped into the air, sled in hand, only to crash face first into the snow. Lifting his head, he laughed heartily, calling it great fun. Harvey looked at his friend in astonishment, as Penelope suddenly asked if he was okay. Evening fell, and the acting crew gathered for a hearty meal, with drinks to celebrate their reunion. Harvey approached the table and bumped into the director he'd recently worked with. Seeing his content expression, Harvey guessed he'd had quite a few drinks. The director remarked that his actors had faced tough times but held strong. He added he was a bit disappointed Miller, the lead actor, didn't show up. Patrick explained Miller was prepping for another project and asked to pass on his apologies. Someone remarked they'd seen it coming even before the project launched. Angrily, they noted the last team gathering was meant to be enjoyable, but Miller's absence showed his lack of courtesy. The director nodded, admitting it was tough for him too, but his companion urged him to focus on Harvey instead. They pointed out Harvey had starred in 2 projects, which was impressive, and there was no need to dwell on Miller. Patrick cleared his throat awkwardly, agreeing with the sentiment. The director reassured him, saying all was well and he held no grudges. Grabbing Harvey's hand, he asked if he was truly set to star in the film, warning it might not be wise. He argued it'd be a long wait for the film's premiere. Harvey smiled, conceding there was logic in that, as films, unlike dramas, got immediate audience feedback and were like hardcover novels. He admitted filming wasn't easy. His friends then called for a toast. The director approached Harvey again with an unusual proposition. Instead of the film, they could team up for the next project, with Harvey as the lead. Ingrid jumped in, claiming she'd be a better fit for the starring role. Kendrick chimed in, saying his schedule was open for any project. Feeling uneasy, Harvey chose to sidestep the conversation. Just then, a familiar face approached, asking what film he'd star in next. It was Penelope, whose seasoned judgment Harvey trusted completely. Harvey paused briefly before announcing that he'd be featuring in a movie titled Shepherd and Fisher. Penelope gazed at him, her astonishment clear, and inquired if he had truly landed a role in such a major hit. She mentioned that it was director Howard's upcoming venture and that the renowned Joe was slated to take the starring role. His friends instantly chimed in, praising his achievement and expressing disbelief that he'd be working with this director next. A crowd quickly gathered around him, voicing their friendly envy of his remarkable rise. Some whispered that the director likely wanted to secure him before his value soared. The director placed a hand on the chatty friend's shoulder, silencing him instantly. The actor chuckled, claiming it was just a jest, but the director brushed it off. Approaching Harvey, he insisted that they absolutely had to collaborate on this project. Later, during a script read through for the film, Fisher and Hunter suggested he take the lead. Soon after, someone flashed a vibrant orange debit card, clearly loaded with funds. They expressed their desire to proceed with enthusiasm, but with firm resolve. Harvey laughed, pushing open the doors to the hall where the main event was set to unfold. But as the doors swung wide, he faced an unexpected challenge, a massive throng of people, making it nearly impossible to pass through. Slipping through like a serpent, he politely pleaded for others to clear a path. The actors exchanged glances, realizing the actor from the drama Train to Youth stood before them. Moments later, he spotted his colleague waving to catch his eye. Harvey asked if he'd arrived yet, and his colleague confirmed he'd been there well ahead of time. Harvey noticed an unfamiliar woman beside his colleague, who introduced herself as a journalist covering their production. She handed him her card, introducing herself as Audrey from Star magazine. Harvey replied that it was a pleasure to meet her, and gave his name in return. Audrey said she loved Train to Youth and asked if he planned to take on more films. She quickly noted that now wasn't ideal for an interview, but hoped to speak with him later. Harvey agreed to an interview at a suitable time, and she expressed optimism that he'd make room in his schedule. With that, she bid farewell, leaving him with his colleague, and Harvey remarked that she was quite unique. He then entered the room for the script reading and found the story stretched thin for the group. Harvey greeted everyone cautiously, introducing himself as an up-and-coming actor. Silence followed, and he sensed no one recognized him. He realized it would be surprising if his role in the drama had brought him widespread fame. One friend quietly asked who he was, just as a familiar voice rang out. It was Hunter, who announced that Harvey was a fresh face from L&K. With a cheerful grin, he urged the others to be supportive and look out for him. Harvey watched in amazement, struggling to grasp how this was happening. He couldn't believe his friend was there, backing him at such a pivotal moment. An older man studied the script and slowly read Harvey's name, glancing around curiously to identify its owner. Harvey knew he had to seize the moment, so he stood quickly, saying how delighted he was to meet him. He apologized for not introducing himself sooner, smiling as he shared his full name and mentioned being an aspiring actor. The man scrutinized him closely, almost intensely. After glancing at the script, he noted that Harvey would be playing Mango. Harvey recognized the actor before him as Martin, a veteran with 3 decades of experience. He realized no one else in the room outshone Martin's success. Martin's behavior turned slightly odd, his expression puzzling Harvey. Then, with a sudden smile, Martin declared that Harvey was perfect for the role, confident he'd excel. Harvey exhaled, relieved, and felt immense gratitude toward his friend for the support. Caught up in his excitement, he didn't notice another man approaching from behind. Joe startled him, appearing suddenly and proclaiming that Harvey's acting would stun everyone. Martin added that if Joe was singing his praises, he too was eager to see Harvey perform. Howard mentioned that Harvey had recently starred in a drama that wrapped up just days ago. Harvey proudly confirmed he was entrained to youth, and the other actors agreed to give him a shot. Smiling, he vowed to showcase his talent fully. Howard urged them to dive into the script to prepare thoroughly. Harvey got to work, focusing intently on the task. Per the script, waves rippled across the Black Sea in the late evening, stirring somber thoughts, with a man's silhouette visible among the containers. The man halted abruptly, declaring it was time for his rival to step out of the shadows. He added that he knew his mentor would be right there. Howard praised the progress, noting a camera shift, and Martin continued with his lines. His colleague replied that he'd just arrived and asked how long they'd been waiting. Several more exchanges followed as the actors carefully read their parts. Harvey observed, feeling everything was unfolding perfectly. He appreciated that no one was vying for the spotlight, each sticking to their role. Standing up, he knew his moment to shine had arrived. Brimming with confidence, a sly grin crossed his face as he slipped into character. Turning to his supposed boss, he asked if he'd checked the time, then questioned why they'd shown up so late, surprising them with his tone. Even a key antagonist in the film looked at him, taken aback. Harvey, acting like a thug brandishing a bat, quipped that he thought he'd die of boredom. Howard and the others nodded approvingly, recognizing true talent. The actor playing the main villain grinned, sensing the moment to kick off the central action. Continuing his role, he declared it was time to stop dawdling and prepare for work, outlining their plan to assemble a team, devise a heist strategy, and map out escape routes. After his line, he asked his counterpart if he had anything to add. Harvey watched, awestruck, realizing this actor's genius was well earned. To him, even the simplest lines from the cast were exceptional. As the scene shifted to interrogating a careless criminal, Harvey zeroed in on Joe's performance, fully immersed. He clearly recognized that Joe, through his mere involvement, was driving this project forward like an unyielding train. One of the thugs, as scripted, was meant to lose his temper, his teeth audibly grinding. He seized his partner and demanded he quiet down at once before things escalated. Harvey started feeling uneasy because the actors were diving too deeply into their roles. Joe, on the other hand, seemed completely at ease, observing the scene with curiosity. Howard paused for a moment, then set the script aside, stating he needed a brief rest. He remarked that the group was getting overly intense and suggested they dial it back slightly. Speaking to one actor, he noted that the character's demeanor wasn't so harsh and needed to be more subdued. Harvey closely observed as the director offered feedback to each team member. He also noticed that this was a scene where they were halted, but the focus shifted to an actor who wasn't sufficiently prepared. One of the actors was a man with a challenging past. This man, an actor named Pagan, had hands trembling intensely from nerves. Harvey recalled whispers that after turning 30, Pagan's performances had declined, though his striking looks remained unchanged. Howard continued critiquing the others, advising them not to overdo the tears. He added that the supporting character needed to preserve his distinctiveness. After a pause, he proposed moving forward, starting with the third scene. Harvey realized this was his chance to stand out, as his character was both an actor and a decoy, a role meant to mislead others. He understood his character could showcase varied allure, but too much flair might overshadow the lead. After reflection, he figured out how to amplify his character's appeal. From his perspective, Mango's core traits should be boldness and audacity. So, he chose to emphasize those qualities. His colleague kept reading the script, stating that his character had fibbed previously about working for a pharmaceutical firm. Harvey countered with persuasive tales, saying life was ever-changing and it was tough to stay tied to one person. After a brief pause, he acted like an innocent lamb, claiming he was just a model student there for fun. Suddenly, Joe interjected, pointing out that this was the same student caught earlier. Joe added that he'd seen this student in the alley, meaning he'd lied about the pharmaceutical job. Harvey closely watched his peers perform and realized this man was a true wild card. Right after, he decided to reveal his character's true essence, dropping face first as if being apprehended. He gripped the script tightly and shouted loudly, showcasing his uncontainable bursts of fury. He called Joe's character a deceitful scoundrel who'd pay for his actions. Joe grinned at him as Harvey delivered his lines with fierce commitment. Howard observed the scene and chuckled softly, signaling his approval. Then, he flipped the script page and said it was fantastic, suggesting they proceed to the next scene. The group gradually began to disperse, noting everyone had worked hard. Harvey reflected that his co-star's monologue was utterly brilliant, and he felt proud to be part of the film. After the reading, the group split into 3 clusters. The first discussed the film's script, which proved far more engaging than anticipated. The second group focused on the performances of esteemed actors Joe and Martin. The third was a buzz discussing Harvey, who hadn't faltered once and recalled all his lines flawlessly. Many were impressed by Harvey's portrayal of Mango. To others, he was a newcomer who caught the attention of Martin and Joe. In minutes, his name became the talk of the set, which thrilled him. An actor approached Harvey, asking where he'd honed his craft. Harvey recognized the actor as Harry and replied that he'd studied in Guyana. Harry grinned, noting it was rare to meet someone trained there. After a moment, he asked if Harvey wanted to step out for a smoke. Harvey agreed, and Harry shared that after his last project, he'd tried to reinvent his image, but it hadn't gone well. He confided that he'd long been unrecognized, landing similar roles with repetitive lines. Yet, he added, new projects kept coming, so he managed financially. He asked how Harvey was faring, and Harvey mentioned he'd recently wrapped a drama. Harry remarked that miniseries were tough to endure, but Harvey found it quite engaging. Later, they ran into the director, who asked if they'd stepped out for a smoke. Harvey smiled, saying they were about to head back to work. Then, Joe jumped into the conversation, asking Harvey to linger a bit. He questioned why Harvey was leaving so soon if he'd come for a smoke, to which Harvey replied he'd abandoned the idea. Joe said he wanted to chat, and Howard praised Harvey for nailing the complex character of Mango. Harvey admitted he wasn't exactly uneasy, but felt a bit off in the moment. Joe inquired about his schedule, and Harvey quickly said he was free today. Joe smirked, suggesting they could hold the corporate dinner that evening. He noted there wasn't much left to do, so they could have a pleasant gathering to connect. Harvey was taken aback by Joe's keen interest and wondered why he was acting so oddly. After a moment, a troubling thought struck him that the reason might lie with him. Sometime later, the actors convened for a corporate dinner to commemorate their splendid gathering. Most attendees shared appetizers or offered drinks to one another. Joe persisted in showing keen interest in Harvey, encouraging him to request anything he desired. Harvey struggled to adjust to such focused attention. Realizing Joe had arranged the dinner primarily for him, Harvey remarked that they were indulging others excessively. Joe responded that there was no harm in it. Harry, chuckling, observed that their youngest member seemed to have captured Joe's attention. Harvey protested that this was far from accurate, but Harry pointed out that Joe's gaze lingered on him. Harry then disclosed that Joe had obsessive-compulsive disorder. Surprised, Harvey asked if that was the condition causing fear of germs and dirt. Harry laughed, clarifying that this was only partly true. He explained that Joe could sometimes come off as abrasive, a result of his relentless work ethic and need to maintain control while guiding others. Harry added that Joe admired actors who excelled in their craft, as he believed skill was paramount. Harvey pondered where Joe drew such confidence, addressing both seniors and juniors as if they were his subordinates. Harry noted that Joe was still quite amicable, not only stylish but also engaging in conversation. Harry even described Joe as undeniably charismatic. After a moment's reflection, he asked Harvey if he knew about Joe's acting troupe. Harvey replied that this was news to him. Harry elaborated that Joe had a favored group of actors, and their roster was impressively varied. He listed an array of actors, each a genuine talent. Harvey absorbed this with evident astonishment, calling it remarkable. Harry laughed, noting the group's eclectic mix, to which Harvey agreed it was surprising. He knew every actor in this ensemble was a celebrated star for their acting prowess. Though not as famous as Joe, they were pillars of the film industry. After some thought, Harvey began to piece things together. The dinner was meant to discuss the upcoming filming schedule, yet it still felt enigmatic. He wondered if Joe had another motive for being present at such a significant event. Soon, Joe's familiar voice approached, asking Harvey if he'd like to go somewhere together. Harvey, smiling with slight surprise, inquired where they were headed. Joe grinned, saying he'd find out soon enough. Later, the scene shifted to the set, where the director instructed the crew to move props aside. Harvey reviewed his schedule, noting its unfamiliar structure. He asked his manager why they were only shooting 2 scenes today. The manager explained that filming was capped at 2 scenes daily due to work protocols. Harvey reflected, realizing this highlighted the core difference between movies and TV series. To him, a series was like instant coffee, while a film was like coffee slowly brewed through a drip bag. Howard, observing the filming, expressed dissatisfaction with the outcome. His assistant relayed to the crew that they'd reshoot the scene. The camera operators adjusted their equipment, acknowledging the directive clearly. Other crew members tended to their gear to prepare for the next take. Harvey, smiling, remarked that filming 2 scenes consumed an entire day. Unlike TV series, where cameramen staged about 80% of scenes, films demanded visually striking shots, requiring multiple takes per scene. Harvey knew other factors could prompt reshoots. Joe stepped forward, suggesting they try the scene again. If an actor or the director was displeased, the scene would be redone, creating a repetitive cycle. The phrase "reshoot the scene" already echoed in the crew's minds after just one day. Harvey grinned, marveling that no one on the crew had burned out yet. Howard announced he was pleased with the latest take, but quickly crushed the crew's hopes by revealing a large group scene was scheduled, meaning they'd work through the night. Harvey glanced at the script, chuckling nervously, realizing Howard wasn't joking. Later, an assistant approached Harvey, asking why he arrived so early. Harvey inquired if a container scene was planned for today. The assistant confirmed his suspicion. Hearing this, Harvey tensely scanned the set, noticing the background lacked containers. The assistant, smiling, immersed himself in his script and reassured Harvey that the containers would be set up shortly. Before Harvey could process this, a massive metal structure rose beside him. The assistant, observing, asked in surprise if Harvey truly thought otherwise. Harvey cautiously surveyed the set, noting dozens of prop containers. He recalled the adage that a film's quality hinges on preparation, and agreed wholeheartedly. Juno appeared, mentioning they needed to adjust his hair. Harvey nodded, understanding. As he stepped toward her, he sensed someone watching him from a car. Turning, he saw no one. Juno urged him not to dawdle, as time was short. Harvey hesitated briefly before hurrying to her for a wardrobe change. Soon he emerged as a striking young bandit. Juno, impressed, remarked that the look suited him and jokingly asked if he'd considered switching careers. Harvey, smiling as he exited the car, said she was exaggerating. Then he encountered Martin. Recognizing the veteran actor, Harvey's demeanor shifted. He approached respectfully, commenting on the chilly set. Martin smiled, saying he couldn't just lounge around. Harvey asked what he meant. Martin explained that actors were part of the set, and it would be odd for the key components actors to rest while the crew toiled. Struck by this metaphor, Harvey began to see actors as integral to the set. He thought Martin stood out for his coolness, but then Martin chuckled, admitting he came because he felt awkward relaxing alone. Harvey, believing his sincerity, bowed slightly, declaring Martin's words the absolute truth. Martin, intrigued, asked how long Harvey had aspired to act, and advised him to steer clear of cars to prolong his career. Harvey mentally replayed these words, trying to grasp their implications. He also realized that without the crew's hard work in tough conditions, everything would differ. He wondered if actors would even exist in such a world. Harvey understood that Martin's lesson would profoundly shape his future. The sounds of unloading containers and the crew's shouts felt like an invitation to a new cinematic realm. Later, the crew shouted to one another, signaling the start of filming. A worker approached her senior manager, asking if he had a moment. Watching the set, she asked if this was the final take. The manager replied that no one knew for sure. She questioned why, noting the director seemed satisfied. The tense employee explained that even if everything seemed fine, it didn't matter. He pointed out that the actor's standards, particularly Joe's, were sky high. Smiling, he said they'd need to reshoot the scene to perfect it. Inspired by his uplifting words, the film crew instantly brightened. Harvey chuckled at the sight of exhausted staff members grumbling about the relentless shooting schedule. Joe caught his laughter and asked what was so amusing. Harvey remarked that Joe seemed in an exceptionally cheerful mood today, which made the complaints humorous. With a warm smile, Joe replied that filming was always a blast. Glancing around, he asked where else in the world one could have as much fun as here. After a brief pause, he turned to Harvey and asked if he agreed. Harvey gazed at him with awe and surprise, realizing this man was destined to be a cinematic legend. After a moment's thought, he nodded, conceding that Joe was absolutely correct. Joe grinned and declared they'd maintain their high spirits and press on. He added that this meant they'd reshoot all night until they nailed the perfect take. His words sparked an electrifying, triumphant vibe among the crew. Harvey, now buzzing with positive energy despite his fatigue, asked if Joe truly intended to keep them working through the night. The weary staff echoed, questioning if another all-nighter was really in store. Harvey mused that God was too mild a nickname for Joe. Hay was more like a devil. The scene shifted to a combat training school, where Harvey was learning hand-to-hand techniques. His instructor advised him to tuck his collar against his chest during a fall. The coach praised Harvey's remarkably quick reflexes, noting he performed far better than anticipated. Harvey confessed he had a flaw his skills couldn't overcome, and mentioned that training wasn't done for the day. The coach grinned, saying he'd expected such a response. Wiping sweat from his brow, Harvey said he'd love to extend the session another hour if his schedule allowed. The coach, Hunter, welcomed the idea of additional training, and Harvey expressed his enthusiasm. Eventually, the extra session wrapped up, and the two parted ways. Harvey paused for a water break and asked himself why he was pushing so hard. Hunter explained that this wasn't just a workout but an intense course, especially with Harvey's filming commitments. He noted that many actors work diligently but quit once the media spotlight hits, yet Harvey persisted. Harvey disagreed with Hunter's reasoning, opting for another training round. He admitted those words only made him feel worse. Hunter, frustrated, asked if Harvey was even listening. Giving up on the argument, Hunter told him to do whatever he wanted since he wasn't listening anyway. Harvey understood Hunter's concern but felt powerless to shake off another meddling advisor. Determined, he decided to practice his next stunt, setting up props and positioning himself to land on a cushioned mat. Rising, he reflected that he had no choice but to climb the ranks and become a fierce competitor. He asked Hunter for another attempt, but Hunter curtly refused, saying it wasn't allowed. Harvey, anxious but persistent, insisted on one more try, to which Hunter clarified it wasn't about his condition. Showing his phone, Hunter revealed Joe was calling about an urgent matter. Harvey headed to the meeting spot, thinking the only way to lure a wolf into its den was with bait. A guard approached, asking if a place was reserved for him. Harvey provided his name and room number, and the guard, understanding, led him forward. As they neared the room, Harvey heard multiple voices inside. The guard told him to relax and feel at ease before opening the door. Harvey stepped in, surprised to see Joe at the head of the group, beaming warmly. Joe turned to his colleagues, urging them to greet Harvey, their co-star from the same project. He mentioned Harvey had recently wrapped filming for Train to Youth. With a subtle smile, Joe praised him as an exceptional actor, needing no further introduction. Harvey politely greeted everyone, sensing their skeptical glances as if questioning his presence. Suddenly, an actor remarked that these weren't food warehouses and asked why Harvey was dressed so casually. Joe explained to his friend Chester that he'd summoned Harvey straight from the gym, but a woman pointed out that didn't change much. Harvey asked Alba why she seemed upset when he'd already said everything was fine. Alba clarified she hadn't said anything negative, and her friend agreed, adding that if Harvey lacked manners, she didn't know how to handle him. She questioned how they could welcome such a person. Harvey, sensing the chilly reception, scrambled for an excuse, wondering if this was their usual demeanor and what prompted it. Another actor sharply warned him to watch who he was pointing fingers at. Joe intervened, asking his friend what he was doing. The startled actor tried to explain, but Joe cut him off, insisting the behavior stop. Turning to the women, he urged them to act courteously too. Smiling, he warned that otherwise, Harvey might think they were truly arrogant and get intimidated. Soon, the group burst into laughter, admitting Harvey's natural demeanor was irresistible. They apologized for their initial conduct, explaining it was just a prank. Harvey embraced the actor who'd been hostile moments ago, marveling at the group's dynamic. They apologized again, expressing regret for the misunderstanding. Harvey laughed it off, saying he hadn't expected such a reaction. Margarita noted it was a tame prank compared to when she first arrived, recalling how Taylor and Chester had playfully tussled. Joe suggested they avoid dwelling on past antics and proposed everyone introduce themselves. Margarita went first, expressing delight in meeting Harvey. She pointed to Chester, who remarked that the reaction was phenomenal. She then introduced Taylor, who also expressed joy in meeting Harvey. She noticed Kieran, who'd been silent, only nodding. Alba, with a theatrical pause, introduced herself and offered friendship. The actors crowded around Harvey, asking about his background. He initially saw them as a clique of local actors, but soon realized they were just a lively bunch. In their company, he felt at ease, unjudged by his background or appearance. He was amazed that Joe's endorsement was enough for them to embrace him as one of their own. Joe called Harvey the rising star gaining traction. Harvey glanced at Joe, who mentioned a soju commercial needing a supporting actor. Harvey admitted he'd love the role, but doubted anyone would recommend a newcomer like him. Joe grinned, surprised that was his only concern, and promised to personally vouch for him. Harvey, thrilled by the influence, eagerly agreed to join the commercial. Later, the scene shifted to a car where Juno confessed something important. Harvey asked her to hold off, but after a pause, she teased that someone clearly liked him. With a dramatic expression, she admitted she hadn't meant to say it aloud, then showed him the ad on her phone. Harvey groaned that it had been a week since filming the commercial, and he'd been teased nonstop. Juno laughed, replaying the ad. Harvey nodded quietly, wondering how long Juno had been acting. Observing her talent, he admitted he could learn much from her. He recalled his first day on the commercial set, where Alba smiled and said he needed proper preparation, surprising him. He asked what she meant, and she replied he'd understand once filming started. Still puzzled, he heard the director's call to begin. After the take, the director praised their work. Harvey wondered why so many takes were needed for a 15-second spot, finally grasping Alba's meaning. Alba commended his performance, asking if it was truly his first commercial audition. Harvey admitted he'd flubbed 10 takes, and Alba noted that was a lot for a commercial. Smiling, she called herself a machine, and Harvey thanked her for the compliment. She pulled up her hood, declaring she couldn't lose to a rookie. Harvey shared that he used to feel down after failed shoots, but working with Alba changed everything. To him, she was a guiding light in the challenging acting world. Alba, staying in character, gazed at him with almost genuine affection, saying she definitely didn't like him. Harvey snapped back to the present, struck by Alba's exceptional professionalism. He recognized that advertising was a labyrinth of complexity, far different from cinema, where a director's vision is singular. Here, the process was splintered into countless elements and variations. This fragmentation posed a steep challenge for the actors, yet Alba navigated every peculiar instruction with ease. Harvey recalled a scene they shot over 20 times, and she never once appeared exhausted. Her claim of being born for acting seemed to fit her perfectly. For a fleeting moment, Harvey felt himself almost falling for her, but he quickly reined in his emotions to focus on the work. Juno, meanwhile, stumbled upon a stash of sponsored merchandise and decided to investigate. The driver mentioned that soju had been delivered, noting there were just as many bottles back at the office. Juno reached for a bottle, only to be halted, informed that the drinks were reserved for a special event. Showing rare compliance, Juno obeyed when Hunter insisted she put the bottle back. But with a sly twitch, she popped the cap, claiming it was an accident. In the next breath, she recited the iconic line from the commercial Harvey starred in, then nearly chugged the bottle in one go. Later, the setting shifted to a quiet village at dawn. Harvey slept soundly until his companion tried rousing him, first with a soft murmur, then with a loud command. Jolted awake, Harvey was told to exit the car and park it while his comrade would soon join him. Reflecting, Harvey recalled the grueling schedule. 2 days of non-stop filming after a straightforward in-person interview, followed by 3 nights and 4 days of shooting, plus additional location work. He'd chosen this project willingly, so he resolved to give it his all, no matter the cost. At the filming site, Lindsay greeted Harvey by name, sparking a hint of surprise. Harvey asked if he'd arrived early on purpose. Lindsay replied that passing up such a chance was never in question. The words echoed something a friend once said, and Harvey smiled, happy to see Lindsay back in the game after a long hiatus. Moments later, someone asked if he'd greeted the director, who was standing just behind him. Turning, Harvey was met with a question about the difficulty of his journey. He grinned, saying he was eager to start working. The director stepped closer, asking if Harvey had eaten well. Harvey assured him he wasn't hungry. The director then inquired about his sleep, to which Harvey gave satisfactory responses. Finally, the director asked what he thought of the location. Harvey beamed, calling it utterly breathtaking and saying he loved it. The director mentioned that the script featured the Hope Cafe, asking if Harvey recalled it, as it was a particularly striking scene. Soon after, a young actor named Chappie approached, offering a respectful nod to the director. The director introduced him to Harvey, explaining they'd be collaborating on this shoot. He added that once they were checked in, they could wrap up preparations and wished them luck. Whistling merrily, the director strode off to take his position. Chappie turned to Harvey, asking why he dabbled in indie projects. Though Chappie smiled, the underlying jab was clear. Harvey sensed the young actor's confidence, likely the star of the show, judging by his demeanor. He caught sharp glances and overheard grumbles about why someone from Harvey's company was even allowed on set. Harvey explained he was there purely for his love of the craft and his burning desire to be part of this project, vowing to give his all. The director spun around, waving to signal an upcoming rehearsal. Harvey told his colleague the director was calling and excused himself briefly. He knew it wasn't just the director's authority that made him the lead, he'd prove it. The director waited for the perfect moment, then counted down to the rehearsal's start. In this scene, Harvey portrayed a bumbling, third-rate gangster, always botching things, unlike his slick comrades recruited by the town's biggest gang. Yet his character was fiercely independent, carving his own path in the film's second half, no matter the odds. In this sequence, he was to take a brutal hit to the face and collapse backward. Despite the injury, his character had to defiantly shout that it was him and no one else. The director gleefully called a wrap on the scene, moving to the fight sequence, and praised Harvey's performance. Harvey grinned, catching Chappie's sour expression. As he rose, he thought that if he doubted someone's ability only to see them excel, he'd be upset too. Still, he chose not to gloat, offering Chappie a handshake and saying he looked forward to the next scene. Chappie stared, visibly puzzled by Harvey's courtesy. Time passed, and they began filming a chase scene with the main character. Harvey sprinted forward, a gut feeling warning him of trouble. He sensed a shift was coming. He was about to clash with Chappie. Chappie readied himself, swinging a kick. Moments later, he landed a swift punch across Harvey's face. Unfazed, Harvey fought back, striking with a headbutt, staying true to the script. He locked eyes with Chappie, a smile creeping across his face. This scene felt pivotal. The momentum had swung in his favor. Later, as they reviewed the footage, Harvey rubbed his head, remarking that the fight scene was rather lackluster. Other actors asked if he'd really stayed under the radar for so long. Harvey clarified it wasn't that extended beyond college and the army. He'd been off the grid for maybe 3 or 4 years. Lindsay chimed in, saying Harvey was a friend who'd shared that obscure phase, and the awkward vibe had kept him quiet. He added that Harvey wasn't the person some had misjudged. Chappie offered a heartfelt apology, admitting he'd underestimated Harvey based on looks alone. Other actors confessed they regretted assuming Harvey's role came from his appearance. Stunned, Harvey soaked in the apologies and praise, realizing their initial bias stemmed from misunderstanding, not malice. He poured drinks for the group, thanking them for their honesty. Clinking glasses with a new colleague, he admitted he still had much to learn but counted on their future support. As filming wrapped, his colleagues bid him farewell, wishing him a safe trip. In the car, Lindsay remarked that he wished every set could feel like this one. Harvey mused about recent incidents plaguing various shoots. He mentioned that Ryback, the second director, had called to say another actor would play a stock exchange tycoon as a special guest that day. It felt like living in a video game. Lindsay paused, then revealed that Miller was auditioning for the part. Miller greeted the director with a fawning tone, introducing himself as an aspiring actor. Juno tried filming him, gushing that seeing Prince Miller in person was an immense honor. Harvey was taken aback by her awe. He recalled that Miller had skyrocketed to fame post-debut, his polished, aristocratic look making it almost embarrassing to call him a rookie. Touted as the year's most promising actor, Miller's experience and fame dwarfed Harvey's. Yet, Harvey suspected Miller's presence was tied to the head of a major investment firm backing the film. It wasn't unusual for an investor to push their company's actor into a project. Tensions flared quickly between the director and Miller's agent, but they opted not to escalate. Suddenly, the investor demanded lines for Miller to outshine everyone. Harvey observed closely, sensing the situation was spiraling. Howard declared he wouldn't stand for any misuse of authority, prompting the investor to clarify that the proposal hinged on Miller's greater fame as an actor. Meanwhile, Miller stepped nearer to Harvey and stated he didn't steal others' lines, assuring it wouldn't impact his role. Then, with a grimace, he added he hoped that was true. Harvey grinned, thinking if his rival believed he'd let his share of the spotlight be snatched, he was gravely mistaken. Howard firmly stated there was no room for negotiation with this investor. Harvey boldly approached the director, suggesting they film 2 versions zone with him, one with Miller to determine which was superior. The investor scoffed, calling it absurd, but Joe quickly backed the idea. Joe remarked, "What matters most isn't who speaks the lines, but how they're spoken." With a stern expression, he emphasized avoiding filming delays, as shooting twice wasn't worth the cost. He concluded that if it didn't disrupt the schedule, he'd be open to trying it. Howard agreed to attempt double takes, noting Joe's opinion held significant weight. He then sharply silenced any objections, asserting his final authority and warning against overstepping bounds. Turning to his crew, he instructed them to adjust the cameras for close-ups instead of wide shots. Harvey quipped that they should start with Baby Miller. Miller retorted he was the senior figure here and wouldn't tolerate such disrespect. Harvey consented to the arrangement, slyly making an obscene gesture when no one was watching. Soon after, the order came to start filming, and Miller began performing his role. He approached his co-star, hurling insults, then kicked him in the face, declaring he'd defied his command. The investor, thrilled, said he always knew this man would deliver. Harvey recognized there was no arguing with the result. It was undeniably effective. Yet, Howard's expression suggested mere skill wasn't enough. This acting style didn't suit him. While Miller cozied up to his investor, Harvey pressed forward with his performance. Joe, standing near Harvey, quietly wished him luck, urging him to outshine the scoundrel. Harvey stepped up, recalling the teachings of a mentor who pioneered the method acting technique. This approach held that without inner experience, external expression of disinterest was impossible. One had to start from within, as acting focused on others would feel forced. Harvey readied himself, clearing his mind of distractions to embody the role authentically. As filming loomed, he focused on seizing the moment and shifting the dynamic instantly.